think we usually do the operator first and then the interpreting item. I don't know if the applicant who needs interpretation is here.
Okay. Well, why don't we get rolling? And if they are here, we will take them after the operator's license. And if not, we'll get to them in the regular order and hopefully they'll show up with them. All right. Stephen, are you the one who's going to tell us how this works?
Yep. All right. Welcome to our virtual meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members of the committee, if you're able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you're speaking. In this meeting, panelists have the ability to mute and unmute themselves. Panelists also have the ability to add pronouns after their names if they choose. Please do not alter the current naming convention. Simply add text after your name. Please use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. Staff, please use the raise hand feature when you're asked the question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. Staff will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the committee, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. All right, this meeting is governed by Robert's Rules of Order. All speakers wishing to address the committee regarding an agenda item must first complete a registration form and submit it to the city clerk designate. Speakers may speak to the committee only after they're called by the chair. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. The public is not allowed to address or respond to speakers or committee members unless they have been recognized by the chair of the committee. Mr. Verbeek, do we have any notified absences?
Just Deacon Boggs, the ASM rep, and Captain Harrison Zanders, the normal Madison Police Department representative. But instead, we have Lieutenant Marshall.
Excellent. I call this meeting of the LRC to order at 5:39 p.m. Mr. Verbeek, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Alder Miazzi?
Present.
Alder Revere?
Here.
Dr. Reese?
Here.
Ms. Farley?
Present.
Mr. Donnelly?
Present.
Alder Carter? Mr. Fletcher?
Yeah.
Looks like we have quorum, Chair.
Excellent. Do we have any? Oh, wait, no, I got out of order. Sorry. First item is approval of the minutes from our meeting on January 19th. Committee, what is your pleasure? Dr. Reese.
Move approval.
Your motion to approve. See a second from Mr. Fletcher. Any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, motion carries. First item, public comment. Mr. Verbeek, do we have anyone registered for general public comment?
Please, so let me refresh. And no one registered for general public comment.
All right. Next up, disclosures and recusals. Members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Are there any disclosures or recusals at this time? Seeing none. Presentation of the consent agenda. At this time, a consent agenda will be moved with recommended action to grant or with any recommended conditions. If no item is recommended for each item, except items which have registrants opposed, wishing to speak, items which members have separated out for discussion or debate purposes, items recommending ordinance changes, or operator's license applications. Mr. Verbeek, will you please run us through the proposed consent agenda?
Absolutely. The proposed consent agenda for the LRC meeting February 16, 2022. Recommended council to grant change of agent items 3, 4, and 5 and request to extend license issuance beyond 180-day limit under MGO 38.05, items 7, 8, 9, 16, and 17.
Committee, are there any items which Mr. Rubik listed there which you would like separated from the consent agenda? Mr. Fletcher.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering, Jim or Mr. Chair, is there anyone for item 16 currently in the meeting room?
I don't see anyone.
I think that to me. Oh, go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Just mumbling. I don't see anyone registered for this item.
Yeah, I just think that out of all of the requests to extend, that one was, to me at least, reading through it, the most uncertain in terms of where they were in the process, in terms of where they, in terms of whether this extension was going to be useful or not, considering their prior history. So I just wanted to ask them a little bit more about that. So if we could pull item 16, I would appreciate it.
By all means. Are there any other items members would like to see separated? Seeing none, at this time, a motion would be in order. Mr. Fletcher?
I'd move approval of the consent agenda with the removal of item 16.
I hear the motion. Is there a second? Alder Miazzi, are you?
Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I'm seconding it.
Okay, motion from Mr. Fletcher, second from Alder Miazzi. Any discussion? Hearing none. Any dissent? Hearing none. Motion carries. Mr. Verbeek, would you please read off the items which have been disposed of? For those in attendance, if Mr. Verbeek reads off your item, it has been dealt with, and you are welcome to hang up and go about your business. Jim?
Sure. The past consent agenda for ALRC meeting February 16, 2022, recommend the council to grant item number 3, change of agent, Ultimate Mart LLC. Number 4, change of agent, LRP Madison 1 LLC. Number 5, change of agent, Quick Trip Inc. Number 7, request to extend license issuance beyond the 180-day limit under MGO 38.05. 824 East Johnson LLC. Number 8, request to extend license issuance beyond 180-day limit under MGO 38.05. Red Rooster Madison LLC. Number 9, request to extend license issuance beyond 180-day limit under MGO 38.05. Lush Lounge LLC. And number 17, request to extend license issuance beyond 180-day limit under MGO 38.05, 444 Park Street Walters LLC.
Thank you very much. So moving on, item 2 is a operator's license application. Do we have Brianna here?
We do.
Excellent. Brianna, you're
here.
Excellent. Thank you. So, Lieutenant Marshall, can you please give us the rundown why this item was brought to our attention?
Okay. Good evening. I'm viewing the application, and during the background process, items of concern came to the department's attention. The concerns noted have been identified as a conflict pertaining to the licensing guidelines bound by statute, specifically Guideline 3, which reads as follows: provide the circumstances of the offense substantially relate to the circumstances of the job or license activity. And a person who has been convicted or has a current charge pending for 2 or more offenses arising out of separate incidents within the last 5 years in the following subcategories does not qualify for an operator's license. Specifically, subcategory B, alcohol beverage offenses under Wisconsin statute, chapter 125 or Madison Ordinance chapter 38, excluding administrative violations such as failure to post license under glass. In this case, on April 19, 2019, you pled no contest to a forfeiture under statute 125.07, specifically underage possession of alcohol. And on June 24, 2020, you pled no contest to a forfeiture under the same statute 125.07, underage possession of alcohol. In both these cases, I believe these were by the La Crosse Police Department, if I remember correctly. Now is your opportunity to address the committee and dispute the concerns noted.
Yes. I realized that I did have 2 offenses in Eau Claire when I went to college. And after the first offense, I took an underage class. And after the second offense, I took a counseling thing through my university that was recommended from Eau Claire and my school. And I really did personal work and learned from my mistakes. And I need the operating license to have a job right now at a cafe right now, and I would like to dispute that.
Thank you, Brenna. Committee members, what's your pleasure? Mr. Fletcher.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Brianna. A question on my end. You mentioned the class you took after the first underage drinking offense. The second, you mentioned more counseling that was recommended by maybe the university and others. Can you, and also some personal work that you mentioned, can you go into a little bit more detail about the personal sort of the other work outside and or the counseling as much as you can? Because I think the question here for me is more the recency and the fact that these incidents did involve obviously alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. So I was going through a rough stage in my life. In college, you're just growing up, and the influence on your friends was huge for me. So I got out of those friend groups and started working out, doing yoga, meditation, and I found a different route than using alcohol. So I honestly rarely ever drink alcohol anymore, maybe a glass of wine here and there. And I really put myself first. And I think that's a huge achievement for myself.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Alder Carter.
Brianna, you mentioned that you wanted to dispute this. So are you saying it didn't happen? Well, I'm wondering why you used the word dispute.
I'm sorry, that was a wrong word to say. Those 2 incidents didn't happen, and I would just like to maybe possibly getting the operating license to keep the job that I have right now.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, because that's what I was confused about. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alder Carter. Committee, what further questions do you have for the applicant? Alder Verveer.
Thank you. I have no further questions, but I'm happy to move to grant the license.
I hear a motion to grant from Alder Verveer. I see a second from Dr. Reese. Any discussion? Any dissent? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 4 is granted. Congratulations, Brianna. All right. Mr. Verbeek informed me earlier that we have an applicant here who is going to have an interpreter. Mr. Verbeek, is that applicant present? Jim, you're muted.
I do not see the applicant in the list of attendees.
Okay, well then let's just move along and hope that they show up later. Next item 6, change of license conditions for Hone at 708 and a quarter East Johnson Street. Do we have a registrant here for this item?
We do. Michael Parks is here.
Michael Parks, can you please tell us what you are proposing?
Yeah. So we want to do. We want to be open until 2 a.m. on the weekdays, 2:30 on the weekends. We'll probably start with just Friday and Saturday, given that tends to be a little more traffic. And then the real goal for most of it is to kind of see if we can do some more late night food and attract people who are getting off work from the service industry and come back to this neighborhood to live. Usually after 10 o'clock, the only options for any place to go this side of East Wash is like the Caribou and Robin Room, and if you go further down, the Baldwin and LJ's. But the kitchens aren't always open later. I know Baldwin tends to be open later, but again, that's pretty far down the road. So we want to be able to do food stuff with that and kind of explore more. The neighborhood has kind of moved us towards more fine dining, and we still want to do the street food stuff and still have stuff that's available for different people at different price points. And we figure by staying open later, that'll give us an opportunity to do that, and also employ a few cooks that, they're great cooks and we really enjoy working with them. But the fine dining part versus the late night part, they'd be more comfortable doing the types of food that we would do late night. And that'll help us create kind of a training pipeline and a virtuous circle with all that to be able to expand to other areas. It also allows the late night, as opposed to going lunch first for an expansion, allows us to have the bar manager on duty, which can help manage, what's going on, when and where. And by only having it a couple nights a week instead of, if we commit to lunch, that's 7 days. So it's a lot more staffing but yeah, so we've, the prior occupant did have access till 2:30 and the standard liquor license. And we'd like to do the same thing.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I can also provide a little bit of context for the committee. This applicant did come to a meeting of the Council for the Tenny Lapham Neighborhood Association. Unfortunately, we didn't have quorum, so the Neighborhood Association wasn't able to write a letter in support, but the members who were there seemed in support of this. So, committee, what questions do you have for the applicant? Alder Carter.
Thank you. So, Michael, how late are you going to be serving food? Until 2 o'clock or till 1:30?
We intend to serve food until we close the door.
Until closing?
Yeah.
And it's 2 a.m. on weekdays, 2:30 on weekends?
Correct.
Okay. That's the end of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Carter.
All right, thank you, Alder Carter. What other questions do people have for the applicant? Dr. Reese.
First, for committee members, was the reason the sales ended at midnight, was that just because it was a newer establishment?
Yes.
Okay, great. Then I do not have a question for the applicant.
Thank you, Dr. Reese. Committee members, what further questions do you have for the applicant? I will open the floor for discussion. Alder Carter.
If there's no hands raised, I'd like to move a motion to grant.
I hear a motion to grant. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Fletcher. Any discussion? Hearing none. Any dissent? Hearing none. Motion carries. The only condition on the license for home will be stricken. Congratulations, Michael. All right, next up is item 10.
Chair, it looks like we do have the applicant here who needs translation or interpretation.
Which item number is that?
Item 13.
Item 13. Committee, any concerns with taking item 13 up immediately? I see no concerns. So item 13 is a license transfer for Koi Sushi at 502 State Street. The application is to transfer that to 260 West Gilman Street. Mr. Verbeek, will you please swear in the translator or interpreter?
Holly, yep, I see your hand raised already. All right, do you affirm you will accurately interpret English to Mandarin and Mandarin English?
Looks like I have to change the setting here. Okay, let's try that again.
Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. And for anybody who's wondering what's going on, Stephen, can you explain what's going to be happening with the interpretation channel?
Yes, so we're not going to do simultaneous. It's going to be back and forth, kind of old school. So we'll have the applicant talk and then the interpreter and so forth. So
the applicant is Jing Zhang, correct?
申请人是金江。
Actually, Jing, can you please tell us about your proposal?
能不能说一下你这个申请的什么？
我是这个502 State Street 这个Koi Sushi，然后我是搬到隔壁的那个260的这个 West Gilman， 它就是同一个 building 的隔壁，然后 Koi Sushi 的话我就租给别人。
Yeah, so I'm basically moving Koi Sushi, which is at 502 State Street, and I'm just moving it next door to 260 West Gilman. It's basically the same building next door, and then I'm going to be renting out the Koi Sushi space.
And who is this that is speaking?
现在说话的是谁？
是我本人金江。
金江。
呀，我先解释一下，先跟大家问个好，我的名字叫金江。
Okay.
Yep, I got to introduce myself. I'm Jing Zhang.
No problem. Thank you. Committee, what questions do you have for the applicant?
委员会的成员有没有什么问题要问申请者的？
Alder Carter.
Yes. I understand that you're moving next door, but are you changing the name of the business?
那就你是搬到隔壁，但是你这个店名是打算改掉吗？
有这打算改掉。他现有的现在的 sign 有一个挂在那里，是叫 Diamond Cafe。然后呢，以前本来有想租给人家开，后来没租掉，然后现在想自己继续开一下。
Yeah, so we're planning on changing the name. Right now we have a sign above the door that says Diamond Cafe. Previously we had planned on renting that space out for others to operate, but then we changed our minds and we're going to operate it ourselves.
Okay, so you're going to be operating it as Diamond Cafe, and Koi Sushi would cease to exist.
那就是说，接下来就是在 Diamond Cafe 的名称下营业，然后 Koi Sushi 就完全就 结束掉。
可以梳洗的话，我梳洗会移到他隔壁去，但是也是同一个公司来的。
Interpreter is gonna re-explain that last part to the applicant. 对，意思就是说，这 Koi Sushi 这个店，就是 Koi Sushi 这个名称就没有掉了，是不是？
对。
Correct. So the name Koi Sushi will cease to exist.
Okay, thank you.
好，谢谢。
Thank you, Alder Carter. Committee, what other questions do you have for the applicant?
那委员会有没有什么其他问题要问申请者？
Okay, seeing no questions, I will now open the floor for discussion among the committee members.
那么现在没有什么其他问题要问，那么现在委员会的成员现在可以有讨论的时间。
Alder Carter.
For education purposes, is Attorney Briss here with us? Can you transfer your license when you are from one business entity to another?
就问一下市政律师 Brist， 这企业下的执照是不是可以合法的直接转给另外一个企业？
Maybe I didn't understand what's going on. I thought that they were moving to around the corner with the old name and continuing to use sushi name around the corner, but the new location was going to be the cafe. The old location was going to be the cafe.
可能我没有理解。
Am I mistaken?
I believe that you are mistaken. I believe that the intent.
Go ahead.
I believe that the intent is that the old space will cease to be a licensed establishment. The new space next door will begin operating, and that the name of the business will change from Koi Sushi to Diamond Cafe.
就可能有一些误解，就是原来的 Koi Sushi 这个店面它是搬到隔壁，但是新的店名字会改成 Diamond Cafe， 然后原来的名称 Koi Sushi 就在此以后就会终止。
Given that information, I think that the application that is before us may be incomplete because I understand that the application provides for a name change. Is that your answer to your question, Elder Carter?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
那么如果是在这种情况下的话，那有可能这填的申请表格没有完成，因为这申请表格上面有一块是专门是可以申请改名称的。
Thank you, Alder Carter. Mr. Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in the correspondence that I believe the city clerk's office just forwarded to the committee, I think some emails were kind of sent to us. I believe that the intention would be to have a licensed establishment in the current Koi Sushi location at 502. I think Suki's Veggie Burgers might be on the agenda. Jim, is that correct for next month?
就在看着所有的申请的执照的名单下，好像下个月有一个企业要申请执照，它叫 Suki Veggie Burger， 好像是打算开在502 State Street 这个地点。
I'm sorry, Mr. Fletcher. I didn't hear what you said, and I'm just realizing now that I put the wrong number on the email I just sent. So the items I sent actually are for item number 12, not this item that we're currently talking about, item number 13. But could you repeat your question?
Yeah, so I think my question probably still stands. So in the packet, you have the kind of correspondence from Alderheck, and I think if this license, the transfer were to be approved in the current Koi Sushi location, there is a proposal to put a new licensed establishment for Suki's Veggie Burgers. Is that correct to the best of your understanding from what you have?
I don't recall hearing anything about what would exist in the current location, the 502 State Street location.
So let me ask the applicant, what is the intended use of from his understanding of that 502 State Street location?
那就申请人就是在你了解的自己了解，那就502 State Street 那个店面，接下来是怎么个安排？有什么打算？
我已经租给人家了，我就是搬到隔壁去而已。
I rented that space out and then I moved next door.
因为隔壁是空的嘛，我搬过去也是一样做生意。这边有人租的话，人家租了，人家也可以做生意。
Because next door is an empty space, so I can move next door and continue operating. Because that's the current space, somebody wants to rent it, so I figure I could rent that space out and continue operating next door.
Who did you rent the space out to?
那租给谁了？
租给他就是刚刚说的这个叫酱，他是一个年轻人，他是读书毕业了，然后自己要开店，他名字叫酱。
His name is John. He's like a young guy that just graduated.
Yeah, I'm actually here with Jing. I own Suki's Veggie Burgers and I'm renting it from him.
Mr. Chair, would it be appropriate to ask Sean a question or two?
I believe it would be, and it's convenient that you're there, Sean.
So Sean, what is you will be applying for or have applied for a liquor license in the 502 space, is that correct?
Correct. My name is John. I have a completely separate business from Jing, and I am renting the space from him and have applied for my own liquor license for the space that Koi Sushi formerly occupied.
And John, and I want to give the interpreter space to interpret some of the discussion, I suppose.
Interpreter is very lost right now.
Do you want me to proceed with questions then?
Sure.
John, is there any access point between the two spaces where one could go from 502 into the West Gilman space?
No, we have blocked that off.
So there's no possible access route between the proposed licensed establishments, let me put it that way.
No.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions for now, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Ms. Farley.
Yes, so my first question, I know that the application that was submitted was a change of location. With the name change or transfer of license location, with the name change that's being proposed, should we suggest that a change of DBA name form is also submitted with the application?
I strongly suspect the answer is yes, but I will defer to Assistant City Attorney Rist.
Yes, I believe the application should be corrected to provide for the correct name of the new business. Does Clerk Verbic perhaps have thoughts on that?
I don't have any additional thoughts on that.
就因为
Go ahead, Ms.
因
Farley.
为这次申请的是，因为这次申请的是又是把这执照转，这次申请因为是执照转给另一个企业，而这新的企业又是一个新的名称，所以请要你补上一个改企业名称的表格。
Ms. Farley, do you have further questions?
Yes, I have a couple. Sorry, there are dogs in the background. So, let me collect my thoughts. So with the transfer of license location form and the change of DBA name form, there are separate fees associated with filing those forms. Is there an additional form that needs to be submitted, or does the name just need to be changed on the location form? And that would be a question for Staff Attorney Steve Priest.
I'm not familiar with the forms. I was wondering if Jim Verbeck could elaborate on that, because I think that there needs to be additional forms filed. I see that Attorney Gizilby is raising her hand. Perhaps she has an answer.
Assistant City Attorney Gizilby.
Good evening. Ms. Farley's correct. What should happen is that a DBA change form should be filled out, and then that will take care of what needs to be taken care of. Since the LLC remains, the transfer is appropriate given that the LLC is the same. It's just the change of business name that needs to happen. And it's more appropriate to do it on the actual form than just to amend it on the application.
Pause for.
Pardon me?
Let's pause for interpretation.
Oh, sorry.
No, not a problem.
Yeah. I'm just going to summarize because there was a lot of it and I don't actually know what any of these forms are. So I'm just going to make sure that basically we just need to complete a DBA change form to complete the process, or what else is done?
Yeah.
Because in terms of the discussions,
of course,
very lost.
There are two separate processes. One process is to move the business from one place to another. Second process is to change the name of the business. The form you have submitted is to move the business. You need to submit an additional form to change the name of the business. This does not put any kind of roadblock in front of what we're doing here tonight. It's just another thing you need to do in the future.
所以张先生就现在就是说，你刚刚填完的那个表格，只是申请把你的店改位置，就是而且是把就是执照可以转到一个新的地点，但是你还要额外再填写一份把你的店面名字就改掉的一个表格，因为现在就只填了一份表格，改名字的表格还没有填，所以就是要补一份那个表格。
Assistant City Attorney Zilliby, I interrupted you earlier. Did you have more you wanted to say?
I don't think so. I think I got out what I needed to.
Excellent. Thank you for providing that context. Ms. Farley, you may continue.
Yeah, I do have a point of inquiry. So I know on the transfer of license location form, the application cannot be used for reserve Class B combination licenses. If a license is a combination or a reserve license, is it explicitly listed on the license itself?
That is a very good question. It is not. That is just kept in our licensing system records. But we would check when we accept an application to transfer whether or not they hold a reserve license. So this applicant does not have a reserve license. They have a regular license, is what we call it, or has been called in previous grandfathered license.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Farley. Committee, what additional questions or discussion do you have on this item?
那委员会有没有什么其他的问题要问，或者有没有什么其他想讨论的？
Seeing none, a motion would be in order.
接下来，
Dr. Reese.
Move to grant.
动议
I hear a motion to grant from Dr. Reese. Is there a second?
有没有人支持？
Alder Miyadzi? Alder Miyadzi seconds.
Second.
Any discussion?
有没有讨论的？
Alder Verveer, then Ms. Farley.
Thank you, Chair. Does the motion include continuing the existing conditions on the license?
Yes, and thank you for that. I knew what you were going to say. You raised your hand.
如果批准的话，
review
那
those?
现在如果批准的话，执照上面现在的规定是不是也会继续？
Would we be able to? Are they in the packet? I'm confusing myself now.
They are. There are three of them. Jim included the existing license in the package.
Sure.
Yeah, so
I'll
that.
read them off now. The current conditions are. The current conditions are 1, must meet the definition of a restaurant as defined by MGO section 38.02 at all times. Number 2, alcohol service shall cease at 11 p.m. daily. And number 3, food shall be available at all times.
所以这现在的执照的规定就是说，这个企业必须是一家餐馆，要符合着餐馆的法条。第二是酒必须在晚上11点之后不能够再卖，而且第三是食物是一直都必须有供应。
Ms. Farley.
Does I guess I know within the transfer of license location, it states that under the physical description, that a Diamond Cafe sign would be hanging from the entrance. With this motion to grant, are we also requiring that change of DBA form is being completed as well?
I will, after this motion has been voted on, I will remind the applicant that they are responsible for that additional step of process.
今天如果批准了以后，就是要提醒申请人一下，要把改店名的表格要补上。
Committee, what additional questions do you have or discussion?
委员会有没有什么其他问题或者要讨论的？
If there is no further discussion, is there any dissent?
如果没有进一步的想讨论的话，有没有谁反对的？
All right, seeing no dissent, the motion carries. The application for the change of location is granted.
那没有反对的话，那么申请改地点的申请执照改地点批准了。
So, Jing, do you understand that you still need to submit an additional application to change the name of the business?
你理不理解？就必须要还再补一份表格，把店的名字要正式改掉。
我知道。
Understood.
When do you intend to submit that application?
那你觉得什么时候可以把这表格得呈上来？
我明天去拿，我不知道在什么地方拿。
I can pick it up tomorrow. I don't know where to go though.
You can contact the people at the clerk's office. They are, as always, talented and helpful.
就这市政大楼的 clerk's office 那边，他们会帮你。
OK， 好。
And if you come in before next Monday, I think Monday at noon is the deadline to get onto the March agenda, so you can still get this done before I think the final approval from council will be the beginning of April or the end of March.
如果你下星期一中午之前可以把这个表格填写完的话，那么可以下个月的委员会的开会还有时间把你加上去。
OK。
所以如果你下星期一12点之前能够把表格填好的话，那就是3月底应该可以，就3月底的会议应该可以把你加上去。
OK， 我明天就去填。
Okay, I'll go get it tomorrow.
Good. So thank you, Jing, and congratulations on your new location.
谢谢你，而且恭喜。
我有一个问题，我下一次我交好了，我下一次就不需要参加这个 meeting 的是吗
？So I have a question. So if once I get the form complete, do I not need to attend the next meeting?
Technically, you need to attend the meeting in case there are questions. It is likely that this item would be on the consent agenda and would be dealt with at the very beginning of the meeting.
就是严格来说，你应该是出席一下这个会议。万一有人有问题要问，但应该不会有人要问问题，所以很可能它就是在默认的一些项目里面。
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. Good night.
好，谢谢。
Thank you so much.
Of course. All right, committee. I see that we have an alder here with us. Does anyone have any concerns about taking up item 12 next? Seeing none, let's move on to item 12. Item 12 is a new license application for Alms Liquor and More at 1101 South Park Street. Mr. Verbeek, do we have the applicant here to speak on this item?
We do.
All right. Can you please state your name and let us know about your proposed business?
This is Minu Kaushal, and I'm here with my husband, Neeraj Kaushal. We are planning to open actually it's a specialty store that we are opening. We might change the name, DBA name, to something else because our emphasis is not on the liquor, it's more on the specialty product. For example, the bubble teas and the dailies and basically a specialty corner store with the ethnic daily and the bubble tea plus the special wines and the unique items from around the world for the liquor and for the spirits. I think that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Minu. Committee, what questions do you have for the applicant? Bear in mind that we do have at least one other person here to speak on this item. So right now we should ask questions of the applicant and hold discussion until later. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you, Minu. We may get back to you later. Mr. Verbeek, do we have anyone else registered to speak on this item?
We have two. The first is Jim Winkle, and following Jim Winkle, we have Yaniv Lazimi.
All right, Jim, can you let us know who you are and what you have to say on this topic?
Yeah, thank you. I'm a longtime resident of the neighborhood. I've been continuously active in the neighborhood association since 1991, and I live very close by. And at our neighborhood association meeting a week ago, this was presented as mostly a liquor store. That's important. So I'm really on the fence about this proposal, and I know you've heard from many neighbors who are less enthusiastic about it than I am. I think there's an underlying assumption that places which sell alcohol are magnets for trouble. And so I did a quick search using very neutral terms and found numerous studies which do indeed state that there is often a higher rate of violence and disorder where there are too many liquor stores. I'm probably not telling you anything you don't already know, but you might not know we already have some violence and disorder in the area. And in the past several years, it's been higher. So we have four things. We have drug deals going on that block of Emerson Street. The police are very aware of that. We have profanity and boisterous behavior from the clients at the Substance Use Disorder Center on Olin. We've had shootings near the gas station, and we've had noise from the gas station operating during hours when their conditional use permit says they should be closed, despite repeated warnings from the city. So there's a fair amount going on this block, especially in spring, summer, fall. And you can ask, Alder Tagg, Matt Tucker with the city, or Madison PD for more details about any of those. I think what we need is a place that will attract neighborhood and other folks to legitimately hang out at, not loiter around, which will help displace some of the current undesired behaviors and avoid those which could result from a mostly liquor store. So I like that they'll make use of the outdoor space for the bubble tea patrons, but that likely won't be neighborhood folks. I've talked to many people about this project and nobody's asking for bubble tea. I understand there are many Asian stores on Park Street, and bubble tea is probably a good idea, but it won't serve the neighborhood. I like that they'll be focused on high-end products. I know neighborhood folks frequently bought wine at Breeks. So I guess in closing, we're willing to work with the business owners, and it sounds like they're willing to work with us to see if we can come to an agreement that would work for all of us. I don't know exactly what that would look like, but I can say it would involve less liquor. I didn't see an estimate on line 25 of the application for the gross receipts percentage. And to me, that's really critical. That's really what we're talking about. Thanks for listening.
Cool. Thank you, Jim. So what are you asking of the committee? Are you asking that we refer this item so that there's more time for the neighbors and the business to talk to each other?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. Committee, what questions do you have for this registrant? Dr. Reese.
Just curious what your source of information is to say that the whole neighborhood wouldn't be interested in bubble tea, especially given you mentioned a lot of different kinds of stores on Park Street, which get a lot of action. So I'm curious how you drew that conclusion.
Yeah, so there's two different things. There's a lot of Asian stores on Park Street. And so from that perspective, it's a really good marketing idea to put bubble tea there. But as I said, with people that I've talked with in the neighborhood, and again, I've lived here very long and I know a lot of people, nobody is interested in bubble tea. Some people have tried it and it's just too sweet for our palates. Yeah, that's really it.
Okay, so from your informal survey, you found that people weren't interested. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Reese. Alder Carter.
Thank you. My only question is, you mentioned there is is it a substance abuse outpatient facility in your neighborhood? Am I right on that?
Right. It's right next to the gas station, the first building on Olin Avenue.
And that there's been some, loud voices from there, but that doesn't have any, are you saying that the residents there were drinking? I'm just trying to figure out how that ties into this license.
Just in terms of, so when I looked online, I read about, sort of issues that occur around bars and liquor stores. And the two words that came up were violence and disorder. And so I was speaking to both of those, that we already have a lot, not a lot, we have some violence and some disorder already. And that's part of the disorder. There's no violence, there's nobody drinking, but these are people who, they're in treatment, and they're just loud and boisterous, and they swear a lot. So there's just a lot going on.
Okay, I just found my notes. Did you say it was the Farley House?
It used to be the Chris Farley House, and we had no trouble with them when they were here, but that was an entirely different program. And this is younger people. They live there. They're there all day. The Chris Farley House was very different. Those people went to work or, went out during the day.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Alder Carter. Committee, do you have any further questions for this registrant? All right, thank you, Jim. Mr. Verbeek, who is our next registrant?
Yaniv Lazimi.
Excellent. Yaniv, can you please let us know who you are and what you have to say about this proposed business?
Yes, hi. My house is directly across the street from the new building. I believe the committee received a letter that was written that was signed by over 20 neighborhood residents in opposition to this business. And I'll just summarize that. Basically, we're extremely concerned about a liquor store going in this location. We have been in discussions with the developer for many years, actually, and with a previous developer as well, with the emphasis on having neighborhood-friendly businesses. And as Jim said, we are concerned about the issues that are going on the block and in the neighborhood, and we'd like to have a positive business that contributes to a sense of neighborhood connection, that doesn't bring a lot of loud and potentially unsafe behavior, a lot of traffic, potential for drunk driving, litter, refuse, noise. Again, these are not things that we want on a block with some small children, with a lot of, we want to foster a family environment. And we really had high expectations for this space with the outdoor patio seating. We really wanted to have something that would be a little bit more neighborhood friendly. And we really feel, I'm only going to speak for myself, but I think if you have the letter on file, I think it states this much more eloquently than I can say. We feel, and my next door neighbors feel, and people on the block, that this would be a huge letdown for us, and hugely detrimental to the well-being, safety, and neighborhood atmosphere and family friendliness of our neighborhood. So those of us who have signed the letter want to register our opposition in the strongest possible terms. We really care about this neighborhood, and we want to have a much friendlier, neighborhood-friendly business that doesn't incur, and especially given the issues that we've had lately with crime, with noise, with disturbances. We want a business that counteracts those tendencies instead of exacerbating them and putting fuel on the fire. And I agree. I think this is not. I agree with what Jim mentioned about the treatment center. This is not in the interest of people who are going to treatment either. So I think and in addition, there are many other businesses that offer liquor in the neighborhood within an easy drive, and even across the street at the Pick and Save. So with all those factors combined, again, this would take the place of a business that we would really much rather have if there's any other business that can provide a gathering space, a retail space, a family-friendly eating space. There's a lot of other things that could go in there that we would much rather like to see. That frankly would make the neighborhood much stronger, would make it much more attractive, and much more cohesive as a gathering place. Thank you, and appreciate your time.
Excellent. Thank you, Yaniv. Mr. Fletcher.
Yeah, Yaniv, I listening to kind of your comments and reading the letter in the packet, I just want to make sure that, my reflection on your comments is accurate, right? Which is, in principle, you are opposed to a liquor store in that location, and that you you, unlike the prior speaker, don't believe that an extra month perhaps would lead to anything that would change your mind, even if additional sorts of conditions or a change in the focus of the business plan were introduced. You just don't believe you can get there with this establishment. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's basically correct. I'm opposed to a liquor license. I think we had a meeting, a neighborhood association meeting with the business owner, and the two business owners, sorry, and they were fairly unresponsive to our concerns. I mean, they kept stating that they can control their customers if there are any issues. They didn't specify in any way how they would do that. Again, they emphasized that they would offer specialty food items, which we think is great, but they did not address the issues directly that we were raising about liquor. And given that, I would be opposed at least to a liquor license. I'm not opposed to the other aspects of the business, but I would be opposed to a liquor license in that location. That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Dr. Reese.
Thank you. So just to make sure I understand, it sounds like we do have a bit of a discrepancy in what we heard from the applicant tonight and maybe what the understanding was from the neighborhood that this would be. So I think that's something I'll ask further questions shortly. But I'm wondering if you can tell me, in terms of, you said you support other aspects of the business, but not a liquor license. So I'm wondering what the difference of a liquor license would be at this location as opposed to what Barrique's offered.
Barrique's is in a different location. This specific location has not had a liquor license.
No, but it's nearby, which is why I'm asking.
I'm only concerned about this location. Like I said, this is the location that I'm talking about. I don't know if Barrique's was not exactly adjacent to our residential homes.
So the primary concern would be the proximity to your homes, in particular for this location.
I'm concerned about this location hosting a liquor license. Yes, I don't know what were the factor. I didn't have any issues with Barrique's personally, but again, I think that Barrique's is also a business that has other locations that we're familiar with their track record. This is a new business. It's not exactly clear how much liquor would be sold there, how much traffic it would draw. There are a lot of unknowns that were not addressed. And in this particular location, I feel strongly, and again, other 20 some people who have signed this letter feel strongly that it's not an appropriate location for liquor, liquor store of any kind.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reese. Committee, what further questions do you have for this registrant? Here, none. Jim, do we have anyone else registered for this item?
I didn't see before. Let me refresh if anyone new has registered.
I do see that we have Alder Evers with us. Alder Evers, I would love to hear what you have to say on the subject.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, members. I sent an email this afternoon that I see that you got in an addendum to your packet just after 6 p.m. And I wanted to make sure that you actually had time to look at the email that was referenced before that had the signatures or the attestations of other residents, some 20 residents in Bay Creek, and a couple others as well, a total of 6 emails that came in. That is a process concern of mine that you may not have had time to actually digest those emails. And also regarding process, one of those emails from Stephen Keidel, who lives at 826 Emerson, noted that the postcard regarding this meeting itself did not arrive at his door until yesterday. And I would suggest that one of the goals that we have on council is to increase our level of resident engagement and outreach. And I think we need to do a better job of making sure that residents are aware of these meetings and have time to form their opinions. Had more people been informed, via postcard, I imagine you'd have more than 6 emails added to your packet at this time. I wrote to you to underscore the concerns that have been expressed, and I wanted to give you a little bit of background that's been already referenced regarding the history of this site. As you may know, this is the location prior to the development that is there now. The new building was the old Jade Garden restaurant. And some years ago, I think around 2015, 2016, a developer came up with a proposal to build a 4-story building that was actually was strongly opposed by neighborhood residents for one reason, that it would block the sunlight and the solar installation that Mr. Jim Winkle and Bonnie Schmidt and the home nearby lived in, and Jim has testified here today. But the residents gathered around him, and the city, the Plan Commission, turned down that particular proposal. Shortly after I was elected to be District 13 Alder in 2019, I was approached by developers who came up with a proposal to build a 3-story mixed-use building at this location. I immediately went to the nearby neighbors and explained the proposal and orchestrated a meeting, arranged and facilitated a meeting with the Bay Creek Neighborhood Association. And it received near unanimous support. There is great interest in that there would be an outdoor gathering space that could be compatible with the neighborhood. And there was high hopes for this first floor retail space. But there have been issues. There are issues, and it's important for ALRC members to understand. And these center around the Amstar gas station that next door. And this location has been a magnet for trouble. There have been incidents of gunfire, loitering in the parking lot there. And not just once or twice, but several incidents of gunfire, and including moving vehicles shooting at each other, pulling out of Olin Avenue onto South Park. Repeated activity around drug dealing, stolen vehicles in the neighborhood, and late night noise. And residents are concerned that a liquor store's primary source of income will be the sale of carry-out alcoholic beverages, will not assist in addressing this ongoing concern. There's also, as has been stated, a recognition that a liquor store may not be compatible with not an outpatient, but an inpatient treatment facility right around the corner. It's just, practically speaking, this is just perhaps not a good idea. Neighbors have expressed to me they also do not really see the need for a liquor store in the neighborhood. Yes, some people lament that they can no longer walk to Barrique's to pick up a good bottle of wine, but beer, wine, and liquor are available at nearby Pick and Save across the street. And it should be also noted that the new grocery store that will open at the Truman Olson site, currently under construction, which will be the only full-service grocery store serving the South Side once Pick and Save closes, this too will have a full range of alcoholic beverages. And just a half mile away on Regent Street, folks can purchase the same at Regent Liquor. So in summary, options exist, and additional alcohol density, in particular, a liquor store that is principally engaged in selling carry-out items, is not needed, nor is it desired. The actual application submitted before you describes a business with a business focus as being a liquor store that will also sell groceries. Their original name was Ohm Liquors and More. But it really should be the other round. If they're going to sell groceries and food items and bubble tea, and then perhaps a line of other items, that would be one thing. But that's clearly not their primary identity, nor was it their original concept. They've agreed to perhaps change the name, but changing the name will not suffice. It'd be far better if they would, came at the neighborhood with a much more of a listening concept and finding out what the neighborhood needed and what they wanted, rather than asserting liquor as the primary focus of the business. But the reality is that the markups on liquor sales are much higher than the markups on selling grocery and food items. And the applicant conveyed as much in an email to me today, indicating that she can make maybe 50 cents per unit on selling a lentil dish, but can make $10 on a bottle of hard liquor. And my concern is if there aren't sufficient conditions with a business that, is determined to survive, that their percentage of business that's centered in alcohol will increase, and there would be little chance of holding them to any particular stipulation that it be a minor portion of their business rather than a major. The neighborhood association did have a meeting last Thursday, less than a week ago. As a result, I think this approval process is rushed. The applicant presented the plan to the neighborhood association, and a number of questions were asked about the product mix, about a security plan, and in light of the concerns in the neighborhood about violence and other challenges, and how the applicant would deal with these potential problems. And I have to say, I attended the meeting, the answers were decidedly on the vague side. For example, the response was the product mix will depend on demand. The response is we will attract and serve good customers, and that if you treat people right, they will treat you right in return. And this fell flat with the neighborhood. There was certainly not a vote to endorse this. And I think, generally speaking, there is greater opposition to support. In fact, you've received no letters at this time in support. So with this degree of uncertainty, I'd ask you not to approve this application. Perhaps the applicant, given more time, could come up with a business plan more suited to the interests and needs of the neighborhood. But at the present moment, this should not go forward. Thank you, and I'm here if you have questions.
Thank you very much, Alder Evers. We've got Ms. Farley and then Mr. Fletcher.
I lowered my hand but didn't unmute myself. So I know that a number of the concerns have brought up the recovery or treatment facility known as Five Door Recovery. Have any, I guess, operators or folks from Five Door Recovery had the opportunity to review how this license would impact their treatment facility?
And that's an excellent question. I'm not aware. You would have to ask the applicant if they met with them. They did not receive, I do not see a letter on their behalf written by the treatment facility, and I would expect that to be an important part of an application if one was serious about succeeding in this area, at this location.
Any further questions, Ms. Farley? Okay. Mr. Fletcher, then Alder Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alder Evers, you noted that the neighborhood association didn't vote to endorse the application. Did they take a formal position one way or the other, just to clarify?
Good question. They did not actually have quorum of their executive council, so they weren't able to take a formal position. But I can say with no uncertainty that there was clear concern and general opposition. There certainly was not an endorsement or an embrace of this concept. There was reticence. There are some, like Jim Winkle, who are willing to engage in an ongoing conversation. Others expressed a high level of concern.
And I think you now maybe touching on my second question, which is, given I think your concerns as stated in your email and to us tonight about the application as it exists in its current form, are you asking Alder is your recommendation to either flat out deny in effect this license, or provide more time for a conversation to occur between the neighborhood and the applicant in the hopes that there can be what I would refer to as a refocusing of the business model?
That's a very good question. And I would say that the current application for a business called Home Liquor and More, which is stated in the application to be primarily a liquor store with side items and groceries, bubble tea, and deli products, should be turned down. Now, if it's the judgment of this body that there may be willingness on part of the applicant to come to refocus and re-engage, that would be your decision. I think that the applicant has made it clear that the survival of their business is contingent upon the sale of alcohols, that they would not be able to survive selling bubble tea and deli items and those kinds of things by themselves. Whether or not that can be worked out with the neighborhood, I'm not sure, but there certainly is a gap at this present time, and I am a bit concerned that the willingness expressed so far to make those changes and do the refocus is a bit Johnny-come-lately. It was not the initial focus of the application to approach it in this manner. And there's still, even today, in my email exchange with the applicant, kind of a stubborn insistence that alcohol sales are necessary for this business to survive.
Do you believe the application in its initial format would have met more positive reception?
If the current application that you have on file had a different focus, yes, I think it would have received a more positive reception. People have talked about Lakeside Cafe, which is a business that sells coffee and various bakery items and sandwiches, but also sells beer and wine. And it's a neighborhood gathering spot. If that had been more of the focus rather than a business that, if you look at their floor plan, which I find it interesting that they did not present their floor plan tonight, they did at the Bay Creek Neighborhood Association meeting, it showed shelving and a location that looked like was a typical liquor store. Had they come up with a different approach that took full advantage of the outdoor space and created a neighborhood meeting area, as I was shared in earlier testimony, I think they would have been embraced much more willingly. But that's not the application you have on file, and you only have the word of the applicant that they would consider refocusing.
Thank you very much, Alder.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Alder Carter.
I have a couple questions. Alder Evers, did you contact, what is it called, 5-Door Recovery as the alder of the district?
I have not, and that's thank you for pointing that out, and I believe it's fair to say I should have done so, but I have not.
Okay. And this area, I believe, is right on the corner, correct, with the outdoor type of patio type option to sit outside?
Yeah, the outdoor patio faces Emerson Street, which right where houses are nearby. So
it's a raised patio, correct?
Right, it's a second floor patio. And there were concerns in the application process for this development about noise and spillover noise. So there is some landscaping that was supposed to address that. But, I think residents are excited about what this outdoor facility could provide, but they would be also concerned about, the potential if it was too centered in the consumption of alcohol that it could create problems, particularly in evening hours.
And basically, what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that all the options of acquiring liquor or wine or beer are places you have to walk to and carry out. There is no location close by other than Lakeside where you can sit and enjoy a glass of wine. Am I correct on that?
Oh, there's several bars in the area for sure. And I don't think it's fair to say that there are no places where you can sit and consume alcoholic beverages.
Well, I'm confused because the ones that you listed were places that you can just buy liquor.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that the applicant, you're right. I listed the Pick and Save and Regent Liquor. But I believe that there's probably alcoholic beverages sold at some of the small specialty grocery stores along South Park, although I don't know for certain. I'm not sure as to the actual plan for the applicant to serve alcoholic beverages in the outdoor area, and I don't know if they will be opening up and have wait service or anything like that. I'm not sure. The plan is not specific, and that has not been addressed.
Well, I can shed a little light on that. The application is for a Class A license.
What's that mean? I'm sorry.
So, Assistant City Attorney Brist, can you give us the formal answer?
A Class A license is basically for consumption away from the establishment. They're allowed to sample alcohol with customers, but basically there is not on-premise consumption in a Class A. A Class A is intended to sell packaged goods for going out the door and being consumed somewhere else.
Understood. Well, so they could have tastings, for example, but they would not be able to serve a cocktail or anything like that.
That's correct. They could not serve cocktails.
So that would not, to answer your question, Alder Carter, it wouldn't be any difference in that standpoint than Pick and Save or the liquor store on Regent Street.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Alder Carter. Mr. Verbeek, do we have anyone else registered to speak on this item?
The only other registrant I saw was a Teresa Nicholas, who registered in opposition but not wishing to speak.
Excellent. All right, committee. Open the floor for discussion. You're also welcome to address questions to any of the registrants, including the applicant. Mr. Fletcher, then Dr. Reese.
Thanks. I think my main question at this point would be to the applicant, and that being, Mr. Chair, kind of as the applicant has, I think had dialogue with the neighborhood and then heard the concerns raised by neighbors and the alder this evening. How much flexibility is there, in the current model that's been proposed to kind of address some of the concerns?
Yeah.
The applicant.
I'm sorry. Can you please repeat that?
Yep, I can. No problem. So I think you've heard the concerns of the neighbors. You've heard, Alder Evers share, I think, of his concerns and other concerns as well that you've seen kind of through this process. How much flexibility is there in the business model you've presented to this committee versus kind of, I think the vis-a-vis the concerns that are there from I think the residents and others.
So one thing I want to point, first of all, my name is Niraj, so my wife was talking earlier. The one thing I want to bring up is the floor plan that we submitted or presented during the neighborhood, meeting. That was just a sample floor plan. It wasn't official because, there are a lot of work needs to be done in that building. So that was not the official plan. That was just a sample plan. We will have, if you want me to present that to you, I can most likely do that. And another thing, I want to point, I've been taking notes, throughout, everybody's talking. I want to go back to Jim Winkle's, initial.
Excuse me. Naresh, you explicitly are not allowed to address other registrants and their comments. Okay. You were asked a question by Mr. Fletcher. Please answer the question that he asked.
Yeah, so basically the floor plan was the sample plan. So there's definitely a room to change. Our plan is to have a daily and a bubble tea. And, statistically talking, I have spoken to a lot of people. I have friends who work at Meritor Hospital. I have a friend who works at St. Mary's. They said, they will be happy to see a bubble shop and a daily out there, so they can go there during lunchtime and grab a sandwich and a bubble tea.
So what you're saying, just to clarify, is you believe that, if the committee were to give you extra time to work with the neighborhood a little bit more, you believe that what I would, in my own vernacular, you could close the gap between the concerns we've heard today and your current business model as presented to this committee.
I mean, definitely, like I said, I have been doing online research also, statistically talking, a lot of the concern were related to, the liquor store and the crime. I went online and I click on this link on, which is on Madison, police website. It shows the crime rate or crime happening all over the city, not close to the liquor store at all. So yes, I mean, there will be changes, if we need to work with the neighborhood, we will. But, like I said, we will have a specialty liquor store. Of course, you can go to, Pick and Sept, but they don't sell specialty wines. They don't sell specialty liquor, or they don't sell specialty, beer and, from the local, the local vendors.
So the point here is that what I want to make a point is that I heard elders' concerns and everyone else's concerns in the meeting other day also. As I said, Tag, that it's not about the wine, it's about making a business successful and understanding where the niche is and what do I need to do. We came up with the plan, we did the feasibility study, we learned that what is needed in the community. I am not sure where you got your survey that the bubble shop is not needed.
Mina,
yes.
Can you please address your comments to the chair or to the committee and not to previous registrants?
Just answer his question, that's it.
So the bubble shop, we did the research. We figured that there is a need for the bubble tea shop there. We saw the patio. We kind of envisioned that it would be nice to have a community kind of place there, and that's exactly what I presented in the neighborhood meeting also. That we are about the community, as it was stated that we. As I said in the meeting too, we give the respect to people. In the return, they will give the respect to us. It's about building a community relationship, building a bond with the community. I don't want to even go in a place where community is not supporting me. Even if I do get the liquor license, I would still think a million times because I don't want to be in a place where I'm not comfortable and community is not supporting me. I told them I'm very flexible. I'm willing to work with you guys. We decided that we can change the name. Also, we can even change the floor plan. We can do everything necessary to make sure we are going together as one. I have no need to be in a business, as I said a few minutes back. I'm not going to be in a business that where community doesn't support me. I stated that many times at that time. I stated that in the email. I don't know. I guess they are completely against anything. They're completely against the bubble tea, which they stated. They're completely against any deli, and they're completely against the specialty wines or anything. Yeah, as my husband stated, Pick and Save can have it. Anyone can have it. But what we are offering is unique. Something that will bring the people in is like, oh, let's go there. There we can find many different sojus there. We can find different sakis. Another point that I want to make, he said, I was told that we did not
Mina?
mention anything
Mina?
about security.
Mina?
Yes.
Mina, this isn't open time to just say whatever you want. It's answering questions from the committee. So please wait for the questions and speak to the question that was asked.
Okay, I think that's all we had to say. We are flexible. We can make changes based on the needs. Like I said, the floor plan that was presented, it was the sample plan. I can send you that information also. There's still a lot of work needs to be done. So that floor plan may change based on, what needs to be done in the store.
Excellent. Mr. Fletcher.
No further questions from me at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Alder Revere.
Thank you, Chairperson. These are some questions for the applicant to start out with, then continuing with that. The question that Mr. Fletcher asked you is the question that I think goes to the heart of what action we take tonight. So if I could just restate that question. So based on the opposition, the concerns that you heard from the neighbors and their representative on the city council, Alderperson Evers, you are interested in taking at least another month and trying to work on a business plan with neighborhood stakeholders and their representative to come back to us with a plan that isn't primarily a liquor store. I don't want to put words in your mouth, applicants. Is that something that you are interested in pursuing?
Yeah, definitely.
And then let me ask you this: Did you have an opportunity to meet with representatives from the South Police District? Did you meet with Captain Hansen or Lieutenant Beckett, or at least
my wife has?
Can I finish the question, please?
My wife has been sorry.
So Captain Hansen or Lieutenant Beckett have met with one or both of you, or at least had telephone conversations with you?
My wife has been, exchanging emails with the captain.
Can you please summarize what Captain Hansen's position on your application is at this point? And then I'll ask Lieutenant Marshall if he has any information from his colleagues in the South Police District.
He has no comments or concerns, according to my wife.
So you have an email communication from Captain Mike Hansen that says that the police department have no concerns with your application.
Yes, I exchanged the email with him and I wanted to meet in person, but I was told that there is no need to, and they did not have any question or concerns for me. Also, I want to state one more point here that we have a liquor store and the grocery store, specialty market in Sun Prairie, and I also asked the chief over there to write a letter of recommendation for us that in the last 8 years that we have been an upstanding business and we had never in or around our business, we never had a problem. So if that letter of recommendation is needed for the neighborhood, I can provide that as well. I can also get a letter from the mayor from Sun Prairie as well, that we have been in very good business in Sun Prairie and we have been part of the community. I was told today to get the signatures from people that can support our business. And I just talked to people in half an hour and I got about 10, 20 signatures already. So we are the business that we work with the people. We are really good community business. And I am not sure what else I can present here.
Thank you. You actually anticipated one of the questions I had for you, and that was on question 20 of your application. You state that you have an interest in another alcohol license, specifically in Sun Prairie. And I wanted to ask you if you could please articulate more about that business in Sun Prairie. Would you consider that a liquor store, a grocery store? What exactly?
I call that as a specialty grocery store. If I look at my numbers, my sale number per month, 25%, about 20 to 25% of that comes from the alcohol, wine, sojus, beer sale. The rest 75% come from the groceries and the meat section and the daily area. So we are primarily the specialty grocery store, corner store, but we carry everything what the community needs. When they came and they told us that, hey, keep some here for us, we need it because we have to go to the east side. So we kind of incorporated that. So this is how our model works. The way we work is that we work with the people around us who wants a certain things that they can't find, and then we provide those. So we are the specialty grocery store who provides one-stop shop items to everyone who needs the stuff.
Thank you. Could you explain the geography of your Sun Prairie establishment? Is it adjacent to residential uses?
Yes, our store is located in the strip mall, adjacent to a lot of residential areas. Yes.
And as I stated last time too in my neighborhood meeting, that there is a church right next door. Like we have the clinic and then next door church to our store. In 8 years, we never had a single issue with the church or anyone standing outside our premises. When I was asked the question on the security, that's the same thing. I said the same thing about the respect. Even though there will be people who create problem, but there is a way to handle it. The way to handle things nicely, or the way to escalate it, or in a certain way. It's a small community. Every community is a small community. How can you be part of community, and how can you take care of things and be part of each other? That's how my model is, and that's how we do. And if we need security, yes, police is always there. You can always call them. In my Park Street store, when we opened, we didn't realize that we need a security person because we did not understand the community need, how it works. When we realized that we need a security person here, we hired the security person here to help. But we also help, and the security person also help greet them. So it serves the both needs. So I hope I answered your question.
I appreciate that. And speaking of your business, your existing business on South Park Street, that's a beauty store, is that correct?
It has the beauty products as well. No, we opened a beauty store on the South Park Street 3 months ago.
And how far is that from this proposed location?
2 blocks.
2 blocks.
It's probably a mile, I would say. It's right across, after the railroad where the Madison Recycling Center is.
Oh, I see. Thank you. So I think the main issue for us again tonight is, do we refer this application to a future meeting, or deny it, owing to concerns of the health, safety, and welfare of the community? And so it's quite clear. Just want to make sure that this is quite clear to what you're advocating here, is that you would like further opportunity to work with neighborhood stakeholders to formulate a business plan that they hopefully could be supportive of. That's correct.
That is correct. If we need more time and come up with a better business plan, then yes.
I would also just say, and I realize I'm not asking a question here, but appreciate the chair's indulgence, that I think it would be helpful if you do reach out to Catholic Charities, if your application is referred, or even if it's denied and you wish to come back at a future date, and have a communication with your neighbors at Catholic Charities. And then further, I'd also encourage you to research the uniform liquor license conditions that are on a myriad of Class A establishments in the central city of Madison. So there are 4 distinct separate conditions to try to attempt to get at concerns of loitering out and panhandling outside of liquor stores in particular. And those have been conditions on alcohol licenses in the campus downtown area and to various degrees elsewhere in the city for well over a decade now. So I think that if you are going to be successful with the Class A license, you should also look to those license conditions, which Jim Verbeck from the city clerk's office can assist you with.
Excellent. Any further questions, Alder Verveer?
Could I just ask them in the form of a question, Chair, do you understand what I'm suggesting beyond the Catholic Charities communication in terms of those liquor license conditions?
Yes, we do. And just to let you know, my wife has reached out to the Catholic community also.
And we did meet Steve Maurice, and I had a sit down meeting about 3-4 months ago. I did not have any objection from him. He was very excited that we are coming to the neighborhood. I did not get any opposition from him.
So you're representing that Catholic Charities has no concerns with your application?
Correct. I sat down with Steve Maurice, and he did not. He was very happy. He was on board with me. I went there with my son to meet him in person, and he was very excited. He had the concern before from the liquor store. He said he had concern. He said he don't have any concern about being the liquor store around. He just had the way it was run before. So that is the reason that he was against having a liquor store on the Park Street. But he gave me the green flag at that time.
Thank you for that. Thank you for all of your responses. I appreciate it. And then Chair, I would like to ask Lieutenant Marshall a question or two at the appropriate time, please.
Of course.
Thank you.
Alder Carter, then Dr. Reese.
Okay, thank you. What can I say? When you met with the neighborhood, did they specifically ask for a community gathering space?
Yes, sure.
They did. So,
yes.
Okay. So when they asked for that, were they, was it your understanding that they were asking regarding the patio, or was it your understanding they actually wanted community space inside the store?
My impression was that for any business to be a community store, it doesn't matter inside or inside, it has to flow together. For me, it's not only the patio, it's the inside also. So when I was asked question, when I looked at the patio, I thought it's a great invitation for all the community members to sit down, hang around over there, to have the nice umbrellas, like have the kind of Caribbean look, nice tables, nice benches outside, so everyone can sit down and have good time. So that's what my vision for the community. And then I also thought having some community events inside.
Okay, but that's not what I'm asking you, because the outside, anyone basically who patronizes your establishment would have access to the outside patio. I'm asking if the question came up for you to carve out space within your store for community gatherings from the neighborhood. Did they ask you specifically for that?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. You have a store in Sun Prairie. Have you had other businesses? It was mentioned that this was a new license and a new business, but how long have you been in business in Sun Prairie or Madison?
In Sun Prairie, we started our business in 2000. We've been there for 8 years.
Okay.
And the Madison one, we started in November. So about 4 months now, 3.5 months.
3.5 months. And that's the beauty supply business, correct?
Correct.
But you had businesses before you opened the beauty supply business.
Yes, that's the one in Sun Prairie. That's been there for 8 years. And then we also have a restaurant that we opened on the east side, but it's not open right now. During the COVID, we have closed it since then. We haven't reopened that. So that one has been there for 3 years also. And that's on the East Washington Avenue.
Okay, thank you very much. My last question is, when you did your feasibility study, did you not only look at the area in general, but did you also look at the lack of establishments for the medical mile to patronize? And that's how you came up with this location?
I got introduced to the Park Street location from customers who come from the Park Street to the Sun Prairie location to buy the daily items.
Okay.
So it's been it's about 1.5 years ago that they started saying, hey, why don't you come to the Park Street? Why don't you come to the Park Street? At that time, I started looking at the Park Street location. We looked at the various options. We looked at the Madison Bazaar location also. But then the building was bought by the city, so we couldn't pursue that building. And then we looked at this location. We also came to the Park Street for the beauty store because that was also because K-Beauty got closed. That was a part of community for 25 years.
Right.
And the community reached out to me and they said, because I have some beauty products over there. And they said, why don't you come down here and open the beauty store? I came I did not even know about any beauty store being here on Park Street. So I came based on what I was told. Hey, come here, we need you here. So that's why I came to the community, because they invited me. They said they come over. And since the day I have opened the door, I have gotten so much. I only got enthusiastic response from the community. I have been blessed at this beauty store. No one has complained. They all supported us. I didn't know so much stuff because I only had limited selection at my Sun Prairie store. Because of the customers who requested the product. So I only knew a little bit about the beauty products. So I learned from them. I grew from here. And I have everything that they requested. I got it done in 2 months. That's why I started looking at the Park Street, because a lot of customers come from here to there to buy the catfish, to buy the daily items. So I hope I answered your question.
You sure did. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alder Carter, Dr. Reese, then Ms. Farley.
Question, Chair. Did you say this time was for discussion or questions, or are we just on the questions?
I think I find it generally easier for the registrant if we do questions first and then move on to discussion. Otherwise, it's unclear whether they're supposed to respond or not.
Absolutely. I will wait.
Excellent. Ms. Farley?
So I know we've discussed, and this question has been asked multiple times, as far as given the opportunity to have more time to make changes for the community. In addition to that, having those conversations with the community to find a Edgar, come on, kind of amicable business model, would you also be willing, based off of that business model, to have additional conditions placed on the license? Is that something that you would be willing to explore? For example, limiting, it basically within the license, being able to say this is a novelty store or specialty food store rather than exclusively a liquor store, and having regulation around that.
Absolutely. Whatever can make us a part of the community store. I just want them to be open that we're coming down there. I feel they don't know us much. Probably this particular community doesn't know what we're bringing to the table. So I think they have just certain mindset made. And they're not very open to any of the ideas we present. So whatever we can do to make sure they embrace us, we are willing to do it.
Thank you.
Further questions, Ms. Fowler? Okay. Minu, this is not a question. It's merely a statement. We've seen a number of cases in the past where an applicant who is new to an area comes in, neighbors are concerned, we put some conditions on a license, and in 6 months or a year, they've established themselves, the neighbors love them, they come back and the conditions are removed. Alder Carter.
Thank you for coming back to me. I wanted to ask the lieutenant if he had any data on crimes in that area or calls for service. He might not.
As long as the chair's okay, I can certainly answer that to an extent. Given limited time to prepare for the meeting, I don't have crime data for that neighborhood, and I can certainly pull that up if need be, though.
That's fine. I was just asking if you had it. You don't need to go hunt for it. I have a question for Attorney Zillaby.
By all means, Assistant City Attorney Zillaby.
I think that it's kind of premature to say what conditions we would put on a license when we don't really have a license yet, right? And if we give them time to go back and fine tune their business plan. My question to you, Attorney Zillaby, because you know all, is that as one of the conditions, have we ever put on a license that they have to be a novelty store or a candle making store or a cupcake exclusive when they're applying for a liquor license?
No, not that I can recall.
We did put conditions on IO Arcade Bar against recommendation of our council that they have requirements to have a certain number of video arcade machines and things related to that.
Related to that business. Okay, thank you. When we're ready for discussion, I'll come back. Thank you, Attorney Zillaby.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Alder Carter. Okay, committee, what further questions do you have for the applicant, the alder, or any of the other registrants on this item? Alder Verveer.
Thank you. As previously stated, I do have a question or two for Lieutenant Marshall, please. So, Lieutenant Marshall, as you probably have gathered, what I wanted to ask you is if you've had communication with your colleagues in the South District about this application, and if you could convey what they have shared with you to us, please.
I've not had contact with Captain Hansen or Lieutenant Beckett over this. I can't say for certain if Captain Zanders has. As mentioned previously, I was tasked with this meeting on fairly short notice, so I don't have that information. I can try to get hold of Mike Hansen if you'd like to on short notice right now, if you'd like, Alder.
Yeah, that would be great, Lieutenant, if you could try to email Kelly or Mike now while we're in discussion. And if you have anything of you think that'll be helpful to us, if you could raise your hand, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Lieutenant. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alder Verveer. Committee, do you have any further questions for anyone who has spoken on this item? All right, let us move on to discussion. I'll hear first from Mr. Fletcher and then Dr. Reese.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm, to be candid, I think it would be in line with this committee's principles over, I think, numerous years in a situation like this to provide the space for the community and the applicant to have further dialogue and space to see if a compromise, both on, in this case, the business plan and, as Ms. Farley mentioned, potentially an appropriate package of conditions, looking at those uniform conditions, as Alder Verveer mentioned, as well as others. My only other note here is I think for the applicant, and again, it's not a question versus a comment, I don't think this is a reflection on the applicant's, prior business or current businesses in Sun Prairie, South Park Street, etc. I think this is a reflection of kind of the location. I mean, this committee talks so much about location being key, and how you kind of tailor your approach kind of based on the location. And I'm really hopeful that giving an extra month or so leads to more productive, I think, dialogue between the applicant and the residents. So that's what I'll be supportive of, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Dr. Reese.
Thank you. So I totally agree with Mr. Fletcher based on the conversations we've had and based on, there's the missing alcohol food ratio from the application, also the missing floor plan. I think time would be good for many reasons, including working with the neighborhood. I do want to just add a little bit of caution. Considering health, well-being, and safety as approval, what we consider for approval, it's always a balance to look at what issues are going on in the area and in the city as a whole versus what's happening at a particular establishment. We heard from speakers tonight about the gas station down the street that has had reprimands. I would view that as a separate issue in terms of management of what's going on in the area. Because Barrique's was just 2 blocks down the street, that's gone. And so I don't necessarily see an issue with another liquor license here causing a lot of other problems. So I think we have to be really careful when talking about the reasons why this would be bad for the neighborhood to make sure we don't cross over to personal preference. So if we're going to talk about crime, let's make sure that we're really relating what's happening with this business plan and this applicant with the potential increases in crime in the area. I'm really glad to hear there'll be outreach to the residential facility next door, because I think they probably have an important voice here. And I would, So that's my main point, is let's just be really careful when we talk about crime and making sure that's the real reason that we're opposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reese. Here, I'm going to bump up Lieutenant Marshall since he's probably responding to your previous question. Lieutenant.
Thank you, Chair. I just got off the phone with Captain Mike Hansen from the South District. He had said that he had received some emails back and forth with home and the business, and encouraged them to reach out to their Alder Evers first before having a meeting with the district command. Whether or not that's happened or not, Captain Hansen can't comment.
Excellent. Thank you, Lieutenant Marshall. Alder Carter, then Ms. Farley.
Thank you. After listening to all the comments, including comments from my colleagues, I also would recommend that that this applicant be given more time, if that's a month or so. But I also want to recommend that the alder works closely with this applicant. You know, when we as business owners look for locations to open our businesses, we don't know all the nooks and crannies of a neighborhood or community. As an alder, that is our job to educate the applicant, along with educating our constituents. And I would hope and I recommend that Minu and her husband, I think his name was, work with Alder Evers. I think that when we start as neighbors in neighborhoods, as we all live in a neighborhood, look at a business coming in and then want to have that business provide us with community space for meetings, then we're going a little bit beyond, I feel, what we should be asking. We want to make sure that business has a security plan, and I don't really care how safe the neighborhood is or how unsafe the neighborhood is. I think every business needs a security plan. I think that every business needs to reach out to the neighbors and really shore a relationship, because it's that neighborhood that's going to keep them in business, and that neighborhood is going to also tell other people about the business. So I am all for giving them more time. Reach out to Captain Hansen again. I do know for a fact that they reached out to Captain Hansen in the past. I was part of that meeting, but I want them to reach out to Captain Hansen again and really forge a good conversation with the alder. That's what we're here for. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Alder Carter. Mr. Verbeek, do you have some information for us?
Yeah, I just want to point out that the applicant not listing their alcohol food ratios is not an omission by the applicant. We don't require Class A applicants to put their food and alcohol ratios in there. So it's not that they left it out for any other reason other than that's not something we ask Class A's to. We ask the Class B's because we want to know whether they're a tavern or a restaurant. So there's an intention of why we don't ask that for Class A's.
Excellent. Thank you for that useful information. Ms. Farley, then Mr. Fletcher.
Mr. Verbeek beat me to my first point there, but yeah, I think there's a really great opportunity for the community and the applicant to both kind of reevaluate some of the goals of the community and some of the goals of the applicant as well. I agree with the previous elders and chair people that giving this more time to be discussed with the community and develop a plan that is kind of more in line with what we're seeing would definitely be my recommendation. And additionally, reaching out to the residential facility, as well as, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there is also a family medical center located across from the location as well. I know we have certain regulations around hospitals and things like that. While it might not necessarily be considered a hospital, they're an organization that I would like to recommend the applicant reach out to as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Farley. Mr. Fletcher, then Alder Verveer.
I was going to make a motion, but I'll defer to the alder.
Alder Verveer.
I too was going to move a motion and speak to it. So why don't you go ahead, Mr. Fletcher, and I probably will second it.
I'll move referral to our next regularly scheduled meeting.
I second.
A motion to refer from Mr. Fletcher, a second from Alder Verveer. Mr. Fletcher, would you like to speak to your motion?
Not anything. I think I would just say ditto to, I hope the applicant takes on board, I think the sage advice of my colleagues. So
Alder Verveer.
Thank you. A few points in favor of the motion to refer to our next regular meeting. First, at the outset, I sincerely want to thank the residents of the Bay Creek neighborhood that testified and shared written testimony with us, and certainly thank their elected representative, Alderperson Evers, for his testimony tonight, both in writing and in person. So I would very much hope that over the course of the next 4 weeks or so, that there is an opportunity for another meeting, whether it be under the auspices of the Bay Creek Neighborhood Association or organized by Alderperson Evers, that there be a community meeting where hopefully a new business plan can be presented that can be supportive of most of the stakeholders in the neighborhood. I realize at the risk of being repetitive, but when I say this, but I'd encourage the applicants and other interested parties to look at conditions that are in other Class A establishments in the city of Madison. It might be a little hard to use find and use the search function on the city clerk's section of the city website. But once you find it, it's pretty easy to use, and you'll see that there are standard conditions that we use due to location, largely. Again, emphasizing that this isn't about the concern, and at least in my part, on the qualifications of the applicant. Obviously, they apparently have a very good track record holding a Class A license in the city of Sun Prairie. The concern really is one of location and how it affects the quality of life of the adjacent neighbors there, whether it be the Catholic Charities, AODA facility, or other residences in that neighborhood. So anyway, I'd encourage both the applicants, neighborhood activists, others that are interested to search out the city clerk's website alcohol license search function, where you will find again a myriad of conditions that are placed on Class A licenses that hopefully would address concerns of loitering and panhandling, among others. I'll also specifically mention one that is very close to where I reside, and that is the CVS pharmacy at South Bedford Street and West Washington Avenue. You'll see when you look at those license conditions, of which there are several, it also goes into areas that might provide comfort for neighboring stakeholders, such as the amount of square footage that can be utilized for alcohol products, the amount of cooler space that can be utilized for alcohol products. That's something that the ALRC used to do rather routinely years and years ago. When I first joined this committee, we've kind of gotten away from it and don't do it as often. But we often did it with convenience stores, where we did limit the amount of floor space that was available for alcohol products to be displayed. And that's something that might be by way of a legal license condition that might be comforting to the neighbors and acceptable to the applicant. So lastly, it sounds like from Lieutenant Marshall that the applicants really should contact Captain Mike Hansen in the South District again sooner rather than later, and have a thorough conversation with the South District Police Command staff to see what recommendations they might have for a successful business at this location. So I do wish everyone the best of luck over the next several weeks and having a productive dialogue that hopefully will come back here in March and find this a lot easier conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Verveer. Any further discussion of this motion? All right, we have a motion to refer to the next regularly scheduled ALRC meeting. Mr. Verbeek, would you please call the roll?
Will do. Oops, hold on. The wrong set. Alder Miadzi?
In favor.
Alder Miadzi, aye. Alder Revere?
Aye.
Alder Revere, aye. Dr. Reese?
Aye.
Dr. Reese, aye. Ms. Farley?
Aye.
Ms. Farley, aye. Alder Carter?
Aye.
Alder Carter, aye. Mr. Fletcher?
Aye.
Mr. Fletcher, aye. Chair, that is 6 ayes and 0 nays.
Excellent. Motion carries. So we will see you again next month. All right, that is item 12. Next up, item 10. Item 10 is an ordinance change to create the Roadway Cafe permit to allow for the expansion of licensed sidewalk cafes into the roadway. Who will speak about this?
Well, let me make them first. Megan Blake Horst is here, who is our street vending coordinator, and she's going to speak to the general topic. But Attorney Zilvey and I are going to talk about the one paragraph that has to do with alcohol beverage law in Chapter 38. And we're going to propose a slight change, and also it looks like there's a drafting correction that needs to be made.
Okay. And I actually need to step away for a moment. Mr. Fletcher, will you accept the virtual gavel, please?
That sounds good to me, Mr. Chair. So before we go on, Alder Revere, is there something you'd like to say before we turn it over to Ms. Blake Horst?
Yes, please, Vice Chair Fletcher. With the indulgence of my friends and city staff, especially Megan, could I ask that we table this item so that the applicants that are later on the agenda could be heard first and then come back to this? Megan does such a wonderful job detailing the ordinance proposal as I've watched her at the Transportation Commission and Transportation Policy and Planning Board meetings the last couple of weeks. I think that this could take a bit of time, and I would rather not hold up the other applicants, some of which will probably be pretty non-controversial that are yet on this agenda. So I formally move to place this item upon the table.
Is a motion from Alder Revere, is there a second? Dr. Reese, any objection to tabling? Seeing none, the item is tabled. That, I believe, takes us to item 16, if I'm correct.
We have applicants here for items 11 and 16.
Got it. Well, let's take item 11 first then. Public hearing new license for the International at 255 North Sherman Avenue. Jim, do we have someone to speak for this item?
You call me?
We do. Apollo Marquez is here.
Ron?
Apollo, good evening. How are you?
Good. Thank you for that. And Alder Revere, thank you for letting us cut in front of the ordinance change there. Definitely appreciate that. My partner as well should be on here, David Rodriguez. If you can see him anyway.
Yes.
I am here.
Okay.
And David, can you? What is your relationship with the business? Just to clarify before we get started.
I'm a 50% owner of the business with Apollo.
Sounds good. Apollo, can you speak to what you would like to do with this establishment?
Yeah, so hopefully people have seen the items that were there. I'm sorry that we're not able to be in front of you, but I do appreciate being back here again. I do know a few of you anyway, and excited about doing this plan. It's been about 4 years or so in the making. We presented it to Neighborhood Association or similar thing anyway, back in early 2018. Now I'm working with David on this, who just opened up Taco Local and has various other food entities in the city. But This building is a 1957 built building, kind of brutalist modernism. 20 years ago, I used to put notes on the building. Hey, if you ever sell this, let me know. I think it's an awesome building, and I think what we have kind of going into it fits very well with the time period, the architecture, that sort of stuff. So trying to, some people have kind of considered that area a blighted area of town. I used to have a nightclub a couple blocks up the street in a different municipality, but so with this building too, just trying to beautify it, bring in something that hopefully the neighborhood will like, but also something that's fairly unique that we might be able to draw from people from other parts of the city and outside of the city. But the idea is to do a sort of a 1960s Pan Am style lounge, and I didn't, Pan Am went out of business in 1992. I didn't get to experience a lot of this, but what I guess my take is on it, or David's as well. Trying to do a cafe lounge, so I'd like to be open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. 7 days a week would be the plan. And David could kind of speak more to, I guess, the food stuff. I've always been super interested in food. I just don't have a whole lot of background, but I do love cooking. It's myself. But yeah, kind of being able to go from breakfast, lunch into, cocktails and stuff for dinner. We are in the midst of also applying for CUP for outdoor seating. There's a nice 750 square foot area to the north of the building. We sit right across from Mapleloft Johnson's Park on Sherman Avenue, which we're on the bike path. We're on the bus stop is directly across the street. Have some ideas for opening up street parking. I did present that to neighborhood association meeting last week. There are some people that definitely are on board, but I know we'll have to get some more people involved on that end. We don't have a huge amount of parking, but hoping we can draw from people using the bike path and just walking in the neighborhood, on top of people driving itself. But yeah, like I said, outdoor seating right across from the park. David, I don't know if you want to mention anything about.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to the food to a degree. The concept calls for elevated dining, fancy supper club, flavors from around the world, but not necessarily ethnic food. So we'd call it fusion, but steak and seafood and just like a menu that really harkens to what you would have expected in the heyday of airline travel. And you went to the airport in a suit, you ordered a steak, you had a glass of champagne. We want to create a really kind of classy environment with the menu and the decor, and really give people the feel to a degree with like what I was going for at Taco Local, the feel that you've escaped, that you're on vacation a little bit. And we're going to do that. We're going to express that with the cocktails. We're going to express that with our beer and our wine list. And we're going to express that with the food. The goal really is to have a place where adults can be away for a bit.
Brilliant. Well, Apollo, David, let's pause there and see if any members of the committee have questions for you. Members of the committee, any questions for the applicant? Alder Carter.
Thank you. And Apollo, is this, I just want to make sure I'm looking at this correctly. Is this in an office building?
In an office building. The building actually was built originally as a dentist office.
Okay.
And over the years, there's been a couple different things.
But it's across from the park, isn't it? Am I in the right location?
Yes, it is across from Maple Bluffs Johnson Park.
Okay, I'm in the right location. So it looks like you're going to have outdoor seating. So are you doing any renovations for that, or is that going to be part of the parking lot?
No, if you're I'm not sure what you're looking at. You mentioned that you're seeing it. If you're looking at an aerial map, there's a location to the north of the building. It's about 750 square feet. That would be outdoor seating. It's not part of the parking. Probably looks like grass if you're looking at a map.
No, I'm not. I actually drove by there, so I'm just going by. I'm going by memory, which might be good and might not be.
Sure. It is submitted in the plan and the layout on the lot as well. If you have that in front of you, you can see that as well. But yeah, so the view is kind of the park across the street. And the facade of the building, it's a split level building, so we plan on cutting about 20 feet of windows into the facade, so you'll be the visual will be this little bit of elevated, and you're looking west to the park is the way the floor plan is kind of oriented to throw your view out that way.
And will you be applying for an entertainment license?
Yes, I can't remember if I checked on there or not, because my understanding at the time, I guess I thought that entertainment license was if you had a dance floor, but no, we plan on having potentially like a 3-piece jazz band or just like a low-key DJ.
Inside,
maybe even comedians. Like we plan on definitely having there's a small stage in the corner, and I'm talking like an 8x8. It's pretty small. Mainly, if there's a wedding party there and somebody wants to jump up on a microphone and make an announcement, or just like a small jazz band, just a single singer, doing some lounge classics or something like that is kind of what we're looking for. More of an ambience versus, not a venue by any means, not where it's, specific to a show, with 2 or 3 artists in one night. Just more of background.
Like you would expect if you had gone to a classy 60s bar in 1960 or 1950 and Sinatra was on a stage, or something along those lines, to really round out the vibe that we're going for.
Like isn't it called the Rat Pack?
Yeah, probably would. I don't even know if we'd be able to fit the Rat Pack. Maybe we would.
Well, with that, I'm done. Thank you.
Chair Donnelly, do you have a question, or would you like to take the chair back?
You can hang on to it for now. I have a question, and I'll wait my turn.
Sounds good. Alder Verveer, you're next in the queue, and then Dr. Reese.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So Apollo and Chef David, I had the opportunity to watch a recording of Council President Abbas's neighborhood meeting about this proposal. So I do feel like I have a good background and have a sense of what the neighbors are thinking about this. I don't know if there are any other registrants for this item tonight, but it just to share my observation from watching the neighborhood meeting, it seems like there is widespread support for your concept among the neighbors, and that the only concerns I recall hearing were parking, as you identified, Apollo, and perhaps noise. At least one of the neighbors was concerned about noise from the outdoor patio. Could you address both of those concerns in a little more detail, please? And I realize fully that it will be before the Madison Plan Commission sometime in the next couple of months. I don't know if you've made application for the conditional use permit yet, but obviously the Plan Commission will also have input as it relates to the parking and noise concerns that might be in the neighborhood. So could you just address those in a little more detail, please?
Sure. I did quite a bit of background search. I haven't had time to really get around to kind of petition residents yet, but I, as I mentioned, I had a spot up the street 2 blocks or so that faced Superior since 1994. So I've been outside of town for a long time. And Superior itself, which is a block behind us, has parking restricted to one side of the street and nothing on the other side. They don't do alternate parking in the winter. So there's a lot of snow and ice buildup and stuff on that side of the street because not all the cars move when the plows come through. The street to the direct north of us, Erie Court, has restricted parking on my side from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. weekdays. I'm not sure why. And anyway, I kind of always thought those restrictions were maybe because of the width of the street or getting emergency vehicles in and out. We're only, a block north of Web Crafters there. So I thought maybe running semis in or deliveries in, they had to have specific widths. But then I went around and measured a bunch of streets because if you get over by the Weary Traveler has no parking. So everything is street parking. And obviously there's residents there that take it up, et cetera. So I called the city traffic engineering to figure out what could be done. And I was informed that, it's actually like a block by block situation that the residents can choose. And there's a specific petition process for it. So I've mentioned that to people. I did get a petition from the city. I forget the traffic engineer's name, but I had a great conversation with him. Another gentleman from there also put together a couple different maps, mapped out what we would be able to add in parking on the street if residents decide to do so. It looks like we could add about 40 parking spots, 20 just on the block that I'm on, and then another 20 or so up Superior. I do know 3 or 4 different people that have lived there, and there were a few people that were on that meeting that you're referring to last week too that, you know, thought that they would like it. They would get plowed out then during the winter, and then, you know, on the off months through spring, summer, fall, it's way more parking. Right now, just with the residents, they fill it up and are fighting for it. So I don't, you know, we don't want to bring a problem to the neighborhood, but I'm hoping that people will be, you know, willing to, I guess, expand some of the public parking that's there, because there isn't like a lot that I can go purchase next door and just put in 20 parking spots. It's just nothing available. But yeah, so actively moving forward on that. As far as noise on the patio is concerned, we do have some ideas for screening to the east of the patio, which is towards our parking lot and towards the residential. And the idea is to kind of focus most of that layout to kind of be towards the park anyway for the outside. And then, you know, I can't imagine that we would be able to go past, you know, 10 o'clock as kind of a latest out there. And obviously, if there were restrictions or something, we could, you know, definitely adhere to whatever, and then just, you know, eventually open it up if possible down the road, as long, you know, we don't perceive on having any problems. But we could definitely address kind of whatever. Hope that answers some of the questions anyway.
I think a big part of being able to have a place where people are, I guess the best way to say it is behaving and cognizant of their surroundings and that kind of thing, is to market the establishment as that kind of a place. This is a grown-up spot. We're not throwing drinking parties like you would find at and no offense, but like maybe at a campus bar where it's more rowdy. This is a different kind of place. And I would anticipate that, you know, just like in my company, we work to set a culture of a certain way, we would be able to set the culture of our restaurant and set the tone of our restaurant.
Thank you both. I appreciate those responses. To confirm, you have no plans to have any amplification out on the patio, is that correct?
No plans.
Okay.
No specific plans.
Or interest? I think it's highly likely that the plan commission, either the ALRC, the plan commission, or both, will likely have a condition related to either no outdoor amplification, or and also likely, as you anticipated, Apollo, a condition as to what time the patio must close.
Sure. I mean, you know,
and 10 o'clock sounds good to me, I'll say.
If there was any sort of amplification, it would be, you know, like a couple speakers hung from the I guess the roof area out there or something. But that would be as an ambience, you know, to add to it, not take away, not overpower, etc. And so also, if it was something that nobody wants us to have, no problem. I don't think it's going to affect business by any means. That's not, you know, it would be to add to it, not to you know, take away from. And we want to be able to service the neighborhood as well too. We're not planning on being, you know, the idea is to be inclusive. It's not to restrict or not. We definitely want the neighborhood to want to show up and want us to be there, you know, as well. So.
Yeah, thank you. Alderperson Carter anticipated one of my questions, which was, you know, I certainly heard you in the neighborhood meeting state that you were interested in entertainment, and obviously you stated as such on your application as well for the alcohol license. So it sounds like we will see you either next month at our March 16th meeting, or April or May, or whenever. I know in your application you don't plan to open until July. Is your optimistic opening date. So just to confirm, you will be with us sometime in the next month or two, likely, for an entertainment license.
Yes,
for sure.
And then my last question is, have you or your architect, Matt Arrow, had any further conversation with the city building inspection division about what the legal occupancy would be allowed here application question number 9, you state approximately 50 indoor and 32 outdoor. Is that still where you're at tonight, or have you received any updated information via Matt or directly from building inspection if you've asked them?
You were working specifically with Doug Paul at Arrow, Arrow Everly there. But yes, he's been in contact with the city. We have revised the floor plan a few times since what was submitted. Nothing major, but our capacities will still be in the similar as to what's stated there. I think the outdoor is still the same, but the inside might be like 48 or something. But we have the space currently right now is just gutted. It's pretty much just a blank space along with the outdoor seating. So everything still has to be built. So we understand that a liquor license is not granted until we've got occupancy itself. So that's one of the reasons why the July is the date we're kind of looking at or whatever. But yes, trying to cover all the bases basically. So hopefully we can stay on track, etc. once we get to be able to build anyway.
Thank you. So 50 and 32 are still where we're at tonight in terms of capacity you're requesting. Those are still correct.
Yeah. I'm trying to
50 indoors, 32 outdoors is
right.
The right number for now.
Right.
Okay. Very good. Thank you both and good luck.
Thank you.
Chair Donnelly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fletcher. I want to give the committee a little bit of context because there's an odd situation here. Apollo ran a club for how long? About 20 years?
It was 20 years, yeah.
And we would all know who he was, except it wasn't in the city of Madison. It was in the little island of Burke there. So this isn't somebody who's never run an establishment in the area before. Apollo, what was the capacity of the Inferno?
So it was in the town of Burke. Basically, when I opened up, they said all you have to do is take the max square footage and you can divide it by, I think it was 9 square feet at the time. So they told me I could have like a 500 person capacity, which was crazy. So I cut it down to 350, which also still was, would get pretty full. But I did that on my own. They were able to go. I technically had a posted higher capacity, and I just restricted it because we just couldn't handle that many people. So
makes sense.
Yep.
So we have an applicant before us who spent 20 years running a 350 person capacity nightclub that was open until bar time and had shows and things. That's a lot bigger and more ambitious than what they're talking about doing here.
Very true.
Thank you, Chair Donnelly. Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, discussion or a motion would be in order. Alderman Veer.
Thank you. I move to grant the Class B combination alcohol license.
A second.
Second by Chair Donnelly. Is there any further discussion? Alderman Yadze, any discussion from you?
No discussion.
Thank you. Alderman Veer.
Yeah, thank you. Just a moment to certainly reiterate that as Chairperson Donnelly stated, many of us know these applicants quite well and have had licenses either currently in the case of David or in our jurisdiction or in the past and other jurisdictions. Although I will mention that the Village of Maple Bluff annexed the Inferno while Apollo was in business, and Apollo was a part of that, as I understand it, the history. But anyway, it goes without saying that these are two very experienced operators. I did not include any conditions in my motion because the only concerns that were articulated in the neighborhood meeting I had a chance to watch the recording of are more appropriately handled by the Plan Commission, in my estimation, when they consider the conditional use permit for the outdoor dining. So that's where there will most certainly be conditions as to the hours of the patio and any noise concerns in terms of amplification with the patio, as well as for a thorough discussion about parking, because the Traffic Engineering Division will submit formal comments to the Plan Commission as it relates to parking and traffic. So certainly support, obviously, the motion, and again, wish the best of luck to the applicants. Look forward to the airplane lounge motif of the 1970s this summer.
Brilliant. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those opposed signify so by raising your hand. Alderman Miadze, I'm assuming your raised hand isn't in opposition to this?
You're exactly right.
Brilliant. Okay, then the motion is approved. Congratulations to the applicants. And Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Congratulations, David and Apollo. So, if we are taking care of all of the regular applicants before getting to ordinance changes, we should jump to item 16, which is a request to extend license issuance deadline for, Odilon Ford Winery at 4614 Femright. And Mr. Verbeek, do we have a registrant for this item?
Yes, Gerald Robitek is here.
All right, Gerald, can you let us know, I guess, briefly what's going on? Probably you're mainly going to respond to questions from the committee, but you do have time if you'd like to present anything.
All I have to say is I'm working with an architect there. There were a few requirements for a site plan for the building, the property and things like that. The landlord's been working with an architect. I've been working with an architect. I think he's been in contact with Al just recently in the last few days. I'm hoping I still might make it before the deadline, but just to be certain, I thought I'd extend it.
Committee, what questions do you have for the applicant? Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gerald, I think when I was reading through this, I did just want to be 100% sure that you now feel like that you're cognizant of all of the requirements kind of incumbent upon you, in this process, and that there weren't going to be further sorts of delays that you would anticipate at this stage.
I don't anticipate any. That said, I didn't anticipate these first delays either. So the architect sounded pretty confident that it was going to go fairly smoothly now.
Okay. That sounds good to me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Committee, what other questions do you have for the applicant? Hearing none, discussion or a motion would be in order. Mr. Fletcher.
Yeah, I move approval, and I, Gerald, I apologize for kind of, having you wait this, this long just for this, but I think I would have tried to clean this up at the beginning. I just wanted to, as I was reading through, I just had a couple of questions and thoughts, but you clarified that in your remarks and your answer to my question. So thank you.
No worries.
All right, we have a motion to grant from Mr. Fletcher. Is there a second? Ms. Farley? Ms. Farley seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. Any dissent? Hearing none. Motion carries. Item 16 is granted. Gerald, I won't jinx you by congratulating you. Best of luck with the upcoming steps. All right. Mr. Verbeek, have I lost track of any applicants who are before us?
No, you have not. All we have left is the item 10 and then the two report items.
Sure. Alder Verveer.
Thank you. I move to remove agenda item 10 from the table with my thanks and apologies to Megan Blakehorst for delaying her.
All right, we've got a motion to pick up item 10 off the table from Alder Revere. Is that a second from Alder Miazzi?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Any discussion? Any dissent? Motion carries. We are back on item 10. So, Megan Blakehorst, will you please tell us what we're looking at here?
Absolutely. Thank you all for having me this evening. And I first and foremost wanted to thank this body for all your support over the last 2 years with helping through this outdoor dining streetery program, pulling it together, kind of cobbling together what we already had in practice, and getting it to work for the last 2 years in this temporary emergency state. And what I've heard from business owners, bar owners, tavern owners, everyone you could list within that, within your zone, is that this program truly kept them alive. And without it, they probably would have closed their businesses. So I just want to thank you and share that with you, so you know that there was truly an impact to our business community as well as our residents, with all of the work that you did that was outside of the normal purview of it's within the purview, but outside of the normal context of what you all do. So first and foremost, I wanted to say thank you for that. What we have before you is a couple of items that are moving along together. What we came across during this emergency time is that businesses, in some cases, used private property, the sidewalk, the terrace, and the right-of-way, or the roadway, excuse me. And so we saw a variety of different uses, whether it was downtown or in residential neighborhoods around the city. And so we wanted to make sure that we were thinking ahead and thinking business friendly. So we've put together all of these changes sort of in one package, so they ride along together. And by the time we're all said and done, these items will be in front of council together, hopefully approved. And then we can educate our business owners at one time versus them trying to keep track of where everything is. The current license holders were sent information about what committees this would be in front of and that sort of thing. So they were aware what bodies they could speak to based on any concerns or positive feedback they wanted to share. So as well as reaching out to the chambers within the city that are represented. So we made sure we reached out to them as well. So with that, we have 4 changes that are proposed, but only one that you all are addressing tonight. And that is really some pieces that are related to cleaning up some language within the alcohol.
Looks like we may have lost Megan. Yep. Oh, there we go. Megan, can you hear us? Let's see. I'm just going to stop your video because that helps with the connection sometimes. Let's see. Sounds like we're not getting your audio either. Can you try talking, Megan? I just want to make sure that. Yeah, okay.
All right.
Let me reach out to her. I'll shoot her an email and see what's going on.
Okay. Well, while you're working on getting her back, committee, what is your pleasure? Do you want to recess for a couple of minutes or move on to another speaker and go back to Megan when she's connected? Mr. Fletcher.
Well, depending on how late this, I mean, we could try and do at least one of the report items. That would be, if those are usually pretty quick.
Any concern from anyone about doing that.
I am back, if that helps. My Wi-Fi completely dropped out. I appreciate the backup plan, though.
Excellent. So we got as far as there are some changes you want to make in the alcohol, and I was expecting maybe chapter of the ordinances.
Yes, that's where I was going. And I was going to say that I was going to leave the details to our city attorneys to speak more thoroughly about that piece. But in past meetings with the Transportation Commission, I've been going through just the highlights of some of the proposed changes. Is that something this body is interested in hearing about? Or would you prefer for us to go straight into the conversations that's related specifically to the alcohol license?
I would find the highlights valuable, but I'd like to see at least one nod from somebody else in the committee before we take the time. I see 2 nods. Excellent. Please go ahead.
Okay. Excellent. So I will go through really just the overview of the proposed changes and the highlights as it relates to all of these pieces that are riding along together. And then when we get to the alcohol piece, I will leave that to our city attorneys to kind of go into more detail. So we are proposing creating a brand new chapter in Chapter 10, which is 10.30. We are doing that because when we were hobbling together all of our changes under the emergency order, we used a process that we had on the books called a street occupancy permit. But that is really more for like dumpsters and that type of construction equipment that's temporarily there. This sort of exceeded the needs for that that license or that permit covers. So we created that new chapter 10.30 that covers approvals from the traffic engineering department, as well as other agencies like Metro and the Streets Division, Fire, those entities as we look at using the roadway specifically. And then we also concurrently created a fee structure that mimics what we do for the sidewalk. The proposed fees for the sidewalk are not changing. We currently charge one fee structure at $5.50 per square foot in the mall concourse, which is our downtown area, a very regulated zone within downtown, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with the density of establishments there. And then we charge a $3 per square foot in the citywide. And so we mimic that within the fee structure for the Roadway Cafe permits that would charge $7.50 per square foot in the roadway, in the mall concourse, and then $5 per square foot to use the outside of the citywide. And I'm sorry, now my computer has been great all night, and right now it wants to really just challenge me as we go forward here. But additionally, within that, as we have been talking about being business friendly, the application process is going to start and finish with the Sidewalk Cafe application, and then it will be assigned out to the specific staff based on what the applicant is looking for. And all of these approvals will come out the other side into one license report and permit report that the customers will have for their establishments. We are proposing that a lateral expansion can also happen. So we allowed businesses to expand laterally as well as into the roadway during COVID. And so we're proposing to maintain that opportunity. The operator will work through that based on what their desired uses are in the application process. One thing we are calling out is that vehicles may not park within a Roadway Cafe permitted area. So operators are going to have to choose whether they want open parking in front of their space or outdoor dining in the roadway. They wouldn't be able to utilize it for their own purposes, for delivery, that sort of thing. When the cafe is not open, it would just strictly be for outdoor dining. We did also amend a piece of section 12.1425 to allow parking meters to be placed out of service if there's a Roadway Cafe permit. So that was just some technical pieces we need to address. The fee structure does provide a portion of fees to go back to the parking utility to help cover loss of meter revenue. And then the additional 20% of that would go to economic development and traffic engineering for the staff time for processing and ensuring that operators are doing what they need to be doing. And then, of course, the chapter 28 piece that we're going to be talking, I'm sorry, 38 piece that we're going to be talking about in a minute, but I will cruise down to the Sidewalk Cafe, street vending changes to section 9.13. We would be creating a new 9.135 that really takes our regulations and the ordinance, because street vending has a set of ordinances and then a companion regulations that are pulled out for some of our license types. We're combining them all back into the ordinance, so it's much easier for businesses to review that information, and it's not in two separate documents and hard to find. So we've really worked to pull all of this information together, as well as create consistent language throughout all spaces that this touches. And another thing that I should call out is that you hear us referring to Roadway Cafe expansion licenses as opposed to streetery approvals or those types of things that you've heard in the past. We made that change really intentionally because streetery to all of us right now, it's very familiar. It makes a lot of sense. But if we think about 10 years from now, if that word changes or people are using it to describe different things, we wanted to make sure our language was very clear to what type of license and or permit was going to be issued. So it wasn't confusing because streetery means so many different things. And so we wanted to be very clear on that. And you can kind of think of it as an add-on to the Sidewalk Cafe license, but ensuring that we have the appropriate approvals for safety. We're also being mindful of ADA accessible stalls or stalls that are designated for people with disabilities or veterans, and making sure that that is a identified piece and not forgotten in this process. We also did talk a lot about table heights and those sorts of things. So ensuring that we have opportunities for people with alternative mobility to be able to utilize the cafe spaces. I did mention, that we're not changing the fees for the sidewalk, but I should call out that we are proposing this as a seasonal option for 7 months, basically April 15th through November 14th. That mimics the start of the vending season, which begins on April 15th of every year. And then it hits that alternate side parking time. So as we get into winter operations, if a business does want to continue operating in the colder months, they will have an option to do that as an add-on license at a prorated fee for those winter months, because there's a strong chance if they are using the roadway, it won't be used as much as it is during the warmer months. So we did try to take that into consideration, but I would say about 95% of our businesses did not want to operate in the winter currently. And so I would assume that that would probably maintain where we'd have a small percentage that actually want to take advantage of the winter. And that's when additional approvals from streets would need to be brought in. So we deal with snow removal, downtown, the mall crew, the mall concourse, maintenance crew would need to be involved in that conversation to ensure that we have snow removal taken care of. As I did mention that the lateral expansion is something that we're proposing, and currently as this is written, we are requiring written permission from both the neighboring tenant and the property owner and or management company to ensure that there is communication between neighbors if people are expanding into the lateral side in front of another business. It does allow all establishments that are restaurants, bars, breweries, distilleries, wineries, meaderies, or other entities regulated by the state, that they would be able to participate in this program as long as they are in compliance with all the alcohol rules that are applicable to their establishment, including any conditions that the ALRC puts onto those applications or onto the license. Sidewalk cafes would be allowed to use tents and heaters with approval of Madison Fire. And I should mention that right now, when I say sidewalk cafe, I'm only talking about the right of way. I'm not talking about private property. So these are only for the right-of-way, the sidewalks, streets, and terraces. We are putting forth that people can use lighting, but they would need to plug into their own receptacle on their building that is approved, an approved outdoor receptacle, and not using city electricity to power their lighting. They could also use battery-powered lights or other solar, other types of electricity providing options, but not city receptacles. Light box, planters, and other decorative items would still be allowed, although as we talk about storage and outdoor storage, we are currently proposing that items on the sidewalk and terrace would need to be brought in nightly. But if you have the use of the roadway, you could keep your items locked securely within the roadway. That would include light boxes and planters and those sorts of things that are not city amenities. One of the big concerns that came up about storage and talking about removing it from the parking lane is that there'd be a lot of conflict. If somebody removed all of their equipment from the parking lane, it would be parked in all the time, and they would have big challenges getting their equipment out every morning because there'd probably be a car parked in that space. And additionally, in some of the ways that some of these were approved and set up had other equipment barriers that protected the outdoor dining from cars, such as bike corrals or other curb features, those sorts of things. Just a couple of things left, and then I will turn it over to our city attorneys. Again, there needs to be permission if roadway cafes are going to be using that space in the winter. And sidewalk cafes cannot be located directly adjacent to and or blocking those parking spaces reserved for people with disabilities. And then we will use existing rules to relocate them if the opportunity does present itself, and that would still be approvable. A couple of things that we are not continuing is rules on overnight storage. We've been very relaxed over the last 2 years, and we would be no longer relaxing those rules. As I mentioned, the power supplies would not be able to use city receptacles, but we would allow lighting. Some establishments may not qualify for winter roadway due to snow plowing concerns. Amplified sound and or music performances will not be allowed in sidewalk cafes or roadway cafes, and all licensing fees will be charged for this coming season. So we had past 2 years, we've had fee waivers. This year, there is no emergency order nor an extension at this time to waive any of those fees. With that, I think I'm going to pause for questions. I know I just flew through a ton of information, and I guess I would like to turn it over to our city attorneys if they would like to highlight that, unless you have questions that you'd like to address from what I just presented first.
Mr. Fletcher's hand up for a bit, so I'd like to let him go first before we move on to more presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had one kind of question. As I look at the way that the permit fees have been broken out in terms of the seasonal ops fee and then the winter ops fee, Megan, I'm just curious, and I know this, again, to your point, only applies to the 5% that may want to run through the entire sort of 12-month period. But if I, want to apply, am I coming back later for the 5-month edition, or am I able to apply for this kind of all in one go? Would I apply for this all in one go up front? That'd just be my kind of mechanical question.
Sure, it could go either direction. If a business isn't sure that they're going to want to participate in winter and use that option, they could apply for the 7-month. And then they would need to ensure that we would work with them to ensure we have enough time to get those other approvals. And if they decided that it was worth their time, they had a demand from their customers, or maybe they had the cash flow at that time and decided that it was appropriate and something that they wanted to carry on with. So they could do it either direction.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's move on and hear from the attorneys.
There are areas that that need to be addressed. Jennifer is going to talk about modifying. There's only one paragraph in this entire document, which is section 38.053A1, general licensing requirements and applications for licenses. It's on page 29 of the draft. I wanted to point out that there are a couple words that are in the document that don't have underlining on them that are misleading because they should be underlined because we're adding new words. The first sentence, the word outside areas, those two words, and then the third word alcohol in the first sentence are supposed to be underlined so that it says, and any outside areas where alcohol beverages are to be sold in the first sentence. Those three things should be underlined, outside areas and alcohol. And then Jennifer wants to suggest changing, and I agree, the last sentence to clarify that in case somebody casually reads this, that they don't get the impression that they can change the outside sales area without council approval. So I'll let Jennifer go with what she's got.
So really the first part of this section is just adding language that codifies really what you already do in terms of an expansion of a licensed premises to the outside. And then the second part, the language that we are proposing the change to is in that very last sentence, where it says no prior common council approval is required if the only change to the premises is to the exterior facade, comma, or any other exterior construction, comma, or reconstruction not affecting floor space or layout in either interior or exterior areas. And that's just to make it clear that if they are changing that floor space, be it to the outdoor portion or indoor portion, they need ALRC approval first. And I also just wanted to say that I had looked at some of the streetery expansions that are in the books, and there was one in particular that was kind of just when it was approved by streetery, it was Alchemy, Ideal Bar, and the Owl Cafe. And it was just one big area. But it's important for the committee to, even in those circumstances where the actual area encompasses more than one establishment, but we still need to define what each establishment's individual premise is. And it wasn't done in that case. So we just want to make sure that for these outdoor areas, we do have it specifically defined, because of course they can't, take alcohol from one place to another place.
You always have to know what bar you're in.
Yeah, right.
And that is something, oh, I'm sorry, Jennifer.
So that's the gist of the changes to the section of Chapter 38.
And you have a good point about that, Jennifer. And that during COVID and moving through all of these approvals, and many times some of the street occupancy permits were taken out by one entity. Going forward, they're going to be applied for by each independent business. And so it will be more defined, and we can work on some of those visual components that will help people identify that they are within which establishment they're connected with. And that is something that within these approvals would be addressed at that time.
Okay. And I understand that streetery was a unique, we were all getting used to something very different, and sometimes it takes trial and error to get the kinks worked out. But I think with what you all have done with the Roadway Cafe ordinance and the other changes, I think that will be very helpful.
There's one other piece I just wanted to touch on, is also the companion piece that talks about outdoor dining and private property. which is within chapter 28, which is where I accidentally misspoke earlier, is that it would be allowing in specific zoning districts, and it's really only 3 specific zoning districts. The ordinance creates a use of this category on private property for outdoor eating areas temporarily associated with food and beverage establishments. And these establishments within mixed use and commercial districts, downtown and urban districts, as well as employment districts. So really trying to keep in mind neighbors and residents that are adjacent to some of these private property spaces, and concerns that we had heard. And then supplemental regulations are based on the best practices established during the temporary outdoor streetery program. And these regulations include limits on hours and amplified noise, as well as specific enclosures, lighting, and other outdoor safety measures. So as it comes to private property, the challenges with outdoor noise, lighting, and those types of things have been addressed in these areas. Otherwise, it would be a conditional use, and they would go through the traditional process to gain outdoor seating, whether they wanted it to be year-round or if it's not within some of those districts or within those districts mentioned.
When you say private property, do you mean private property owned by and contiguous with the licensed establishment, or other private property?
As you first stated, next to the establishment, as you saw maybe in the parking lot of the Harmony or Weary Traveler, those types of establishments. Those might not be in the correct district, so they may be terrible examples.
Sure.
Is what I was going for. So yeah, it wouldn't be for an established or for a parking lot 4 buildings away. It would have to be contiguously located to the establishment.
Something we're going to have to be careful of, fellow ALRC members, is that if the licensee is not the owner of the building, that they do have a lease granting them exclusive use of that property. Dr. Reese.
So, well, excuse me. So will we need to approve like a change of premises, or, I mean, because they're expanding. So how will this come to us, I guess, is what I'm asking.
My understanding is that it will come to you on an expansion of license premise form, like it has before. It won't be, and I'll talk further with Jim about that. I don't know if we need to tweak what we currently have, but that's how it would come to you.
Or when they first apply, as they would normally for an alcohol license, if they're talking about indoor outdoor seating.
Right. And this, so then would this, would they need to reapply with, well, because it would be in there. Once they do the change, then we would be approving them to use that space. So whether or not they get the streetery application doesn't matter to us, because we already approved the use of the space, right? Like we wouldn't have to reapprove them every year.
Right.
If they do the 7-month deal or whatever. Okay.
Like they have to do that process, but you wouldn't have to if they kept it all the same. Right.
Unless they changed their, like if they had not done a lateral expansion and they chose to laterally expand the following year, then that would need to be addressed at that point.
I think a bigger one would be if they did a lateral expansion and then later didn't do one, because that would be a contraction of their licensed premises and would potentially open up some of that space that they used to occupy to somebody else. So this isn't a reason not to do any of this, but we're going to have to be careful and make sure that we really know whose licensed premises any of these bits is.
The decrease of space, that's a good point. If they're wanting to go the direction or no longer use the roadway or something like that, to ensure that we're communicating to those operators that they need to do some additional paperwork to do that.
What I think that would mean is if somebody does one of these applications and it's approved, and then they come to ALRC for a change of licensed premises, and we approve that. And then the next year, their application for the street expansion, roadway expansion, is not identical to their application from the previous year, they should be coming to the ALRC. Whereas if it is identical, they shouldn't need to come see us.
Sounds good.
And I'd recommend talking to Mr. Verbeek about that because he knows this stuff far better than we do. Okay, committee members, what other questions do you have for our fine representatives of the city? So, Megan, what are you looking for us to do tonight?
Recommend the proposed changes be adopted.
Committee members, would anyone care to make a motion to that end? Dr. Reese.
I move that the recommended changes be adopted. Did I get that right?
I believe so. Alder Carter.
Does that include the language that Jennifer and I were talking about as well?
Yes.
Okay, we will communicate that to Jim Verbeek too. If it gets into the minutes, because we're not the lead agency or committee. We have to make our recommendation to someone else who would sponsor a substitute amendment.
Okay, we have a motion. We do not yet have a second. Alder Carter.
Second.
Excellent. We have a motion and a second. Would anyone like to, is there any discussion? Is there any dissent? All right, motion carries. Congratulations, Megan and Steve and Jennifer, and very good work. This looks like a great plan.
I'm sorry, Dr. Reese made the original motion. Who made the second?
Alder Carter.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Sure. Have a great night. All right, on to item 14, summary of recent calls for service. Lieutenant Marshall, are you still with us?
Hello.
Hey, is there
put a kid to bed there?
Not a problem. Actually, I think you timed it just right. Is there anything in the recent calls for service to which you would like to call the committee's attention?
Not a whole lot in the calls for service, citywide or central, especially or specifically for alcohol issues. However, this last weekend, our community policing team downtown had a lot of underagers in a couple of bars of note. We connected with Assistant City Attorney Zillaby, who's our point in that office for some of the issues around bars and taverns. So we'll be watching this as the weather gets a little bit warmer, and we're expecting obviously more of an uptick in our activity and calls for service downtown when we hit around St. Patrick's Day.
All right. Assistant City Attorney Zillaby, should we anticipate that you'll be bringing some point assessments to us at some point in the future?
At this point, I have not read any police reports that would substantiate any charges on my part.
Okay.
I've still, when we get the weekly calls for service, I go through that and select out ones that look to me like they're of concern and get the report. And a lot of times what you see on the list is not reflected in the actual report, like it's nothing. So
nice.
But March is a new month, so we'll see.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Committee, what questions do you have for Lieutenant Marshall? All right. Thank you for your time, Lieutenant Marshall. Item 15, summary of licenses issued. Mr. Verbeek, is there anything to which you would like to draw our attention?
I have nothing to add specifically about the attached report. I will just note that we're about to start the alcohol license renewal process. the letters with renewal paperwork will go out at March 1st. So we're almost there. So if the committee has any things you have suggestions in the renewals, or otherwise we'll proceed as we normally do. I know I need to set potential dates for separation meetings. I know we had the albatross of not having a meeting last week or last year, but my guess is we probably won't have that again this year. So I will look forward to scheduling at least 2 probably dates, unless we think we're going to have a lot of separations, in which maybe I'll schedule a 3rd. But expect a doodle poll to come around soon, and we'll get those dates set in stone for extra meeting dates in May.
My thought would be, if we schedule 3 days and don't end up using one of them, awesome.
That's right.
And if we need to add an extra one, it'll be challenging.
I think that's what we did in the past. So yes, I will do that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Burbick. Committee, what questions do you have for our Deputy Clerk, Mr. Fletcher?
Jim, are there, and maybe this is for Tony Zillavi as well, are there already establishments on the list in terms of separations?
I don't have any.
Nothing comes to my mind. And there's a few that we meaning me and the police department, have met with to address issues along the way. But I haven't sat down to go through to see if there's anything that pops out. There may be 1 or 2 that I can think of. But at this point, it's not anything like in years past.
God.
Don't jinx it. Any further questions, Mr. Fletcher? Alder Revere.
Thank you. Jim, as you know, Jenna Har has, in her capacity as the office equity coordinator, last year had brought together a group to do an equity analysis on aspects relating to licensing. I was a part of that process last year. And my recollection in the meetings that we had, although it's clearly been quite some time since we met, that there were some suggestions we had for the license renewal packet, form and cover letter in particular, and calling out the April 15th filing deadline and so forth. Anyway, that's my long-winded preamble to asking you, has Jen communicated to you as part of that equity process any suggested edits for the cover letter or renewal application that you have? And then beyond that, is your office planning any edits, any modifications to what was sent last year?
Yeah, so a couple things. So we did move, one recommendation was to move the language preference to the front of the application. We're doing that. I know there was talk about creating a survey for licensees to complete, to try to get a better understanding of where just generally the licensees have suggestions for us. I think the best time to sort of provide a survey like that would be when we send out our invoices in mid-May. So they've already gone through the renewal process at that point. So it's kind of fresh in their minds what they've experienced, and if they have any suggestions, if they feel like we could have improved anywhere, that it would be helpful for them to know that. Because I feel like if we do it now, some of them might not have gone through the renewal process, or they might not remember as much. But once they've gone through it, I feel it will be nice and fresh in their mind. I know there's, I'm going to try to work on it this week and maybe early next week, is creating like some sort of visualization, like an infographic about the licensing timelines, and like you are here, and this is what you expect. That you have the deadline here, April 15th. You can submit it April 15th prior to May, but you will be subject to a late fee on that. And this is when you expect your invoice to be sent to you, and this is when it's due. And if you don't get it this time, you have to pay a late fee on the licensing renewal fees. And so just something to better show that we do always, when we send out the renewal paperwork on March 1st, it's a letter that talks about it. It's the renewal paperwork. And then we also have this attachment that has big bold letters, April 15 deadline. And then it kind of talks about the $250 late fee if you send it in after April 15th. And then this year, the drop dead date would be April 29th, since usually we do April 30th, but that falls on a Saturday this year. And unlike the April 15th and the licensing fee deadlines, where we allow a postmark by date, we need it in hand at that very last date. So having it postmarked by April 30th is not acceptable. That we actually needed to have it in hand on the 29th. So all that's articulated in the materials that we provide to them. If you're new to this, we do divvy up all 600-ish licensees divided amongst the 9 of us, aside from Mary Beth, in our office. So that way there's a liaison that they can directly ask questions to, that I'm not the one person to answer 600 different questions, that I'm only maybe, I have 70 people or so that have me as a liaison. As a practice, I always take everyone who's in their first year of renewal, and then any extra that sort of fill out my 70, but I make sure to get everyone who's in their first year. The exception would be like if Quick Trip's adding another restaurant or adding another place, I'll just, we don't really give them to me. They're fine because they just submit them in mass anyways. Same for like the food fight restaurants as well, since that's all sort of administratively handled by them. But that's sort of the practice that we follow, and some of the steps that I know I kind of expanded beyond the recommendations of the equity analysis, but that's sort of the things that we do, and we're sort of going to try new this year to sort of address some of those concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Verbeek. Alder Verveer, do you have further questions?
Well, yeah, thank you. So first, Jim, thanks for your response. We couldn't hear you as well the last couple sentences you articulated. Maybe your headset got a little disconnected or something. But everything that I heard you say sounded great. One of the recommendations I recall from our equity analysis, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that in the past, we've only included Spanish translation in the packets, both the clerk's letter and that April 15th deadline notice. And I recall that one of the suggestions that I thought we had was that we expand that to Mandarin. Am I remembering that correctly?
Actually, the last 2 or 3 years.
I'm having a hard time hearing you. I don't know if I'm the only one, Jim, but are others able to hear Jim okay?
You got a lot quieter.
Yeah, there's an issue with your mic, I think. Nope.
No, we don't
hear you.
You don't hear me?
Now we do.
Oh, you do hear me? Okay.
Yeah, but it's quiet.
All right. I don't know why it's ducking, but let me get another headphone and plug it in. I'll do this one instead.
Well, this has bonus effect.
Did you want me to repeat my follow-up question, Jim?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Cool. No, I heard your question.
Okay, great.
Yeah, no, it was the microphone that wasn't working. I heard everything that you said. Actually, to my knowledge, I think it's been either 2 or 3 years. I think it's probably 2 that the instructions and the deadline letters, I've put out an English, a Spanish, a Mandarin, and even a Korean version of all those. I think that's definitely our most requested. I don't know how many Korean, how many licensees we have that require Korean, but I think we have at least a handful, and so we've provided that as well. I think the majority, I think, is either Mandarin or Spanish that we require. So if we reference their previous applications to see what their language preference was, and then try to provide them with the appropriate translated materials.
That's great. I think that the equity analysis I took part in was reviewing the 2020 renewal packets, and so perhaps we added the Mandarin and Korean last year. But anyway, it's fabulous that we include that now, and that was the most glaring thing I remember from the equity lens that we collectively tried to apply to the renewal process as part of that exercise last year. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right. Thank you, Alder Revere. Committee, what additional questions do you have for Mr. Verbeek? Hearing none, we have completed our agenda. A motion to adjourn would be in order. I see a motion from Mr. Fletcher. Do I see a second? Second from Dr. Reese. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed have the same privilege. Motion carries. ALRC meeting is adjourned at 9:03 p.m. Good night, everybody.
Good night.